Good evening. I'd like to call the Wednesday, November 10th, 2021 Franklin Board of Education meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Sapersky.
Here.
Dr. Kahn.
Here.
Dr. Beer.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Here.
We are all present.
Thank you. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Mrs. Witkowski, go ahead.
A second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Community comment. Participants under this agenda item must be residents of the Franklin Public School District or parents, guardians of Franklin Public School District students, and must limit their statements to 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes for any and all comment. If the community comment is related to an agenda item, the board may respond to that comment either at the end of the community comment session or during the discussion of that agenda item. The board may not discuss a comment or question that does not relate to an agenda item per board policy Administrative Rules 8300. Walt Penzick, please.
Good evening. You're about mask again. So just wondering where our end date on this is ever coming. I know that now the kids are under 12 are being able to get vaccinated. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion coming up in recent meetings going to be about doing the same policies as you guys do with the high school and the middle school, that if they have the vaccine that they can then, we can go mask optional. And then I was watching the meeting from last month. I was not here able to attend, but looking at our numbers, and I'm sure you, I don't know if you guys see these, but our whole district-wide has only 13 positive cases as of November 5th. And my kids go to Pleasant View, there's one, and I believe following this for the last couple of weeks, they've never been over one. So I'm trying to understand why all these little kids continue to wear masks. And I'm willing to compromise. I understand that we're stuck now, right? You're either mask or not. And there's really been no compromise anymore. And we've been now almost 2 years of this pandemic and trying to why aren't we learning our lessons from this? And we know the data says that kids aren't really affected by this, especially deadly affected. So why can't we adjust on how we move forward with this? You know, we know kids aren't affected, and I know people have their feelings about masks. You obviously know mine. But seeing these kids every day, I drop my kids off at school. These little kids, they're falling over from their backpacks, and they have to wear a mask that doesn't even fit their face. Are we really, are we happy to see that? Can't we move forward at some point? So, again, Pleasant View, one case. I don't think it's ever been above that. So we have probably hundreds of kids in there wearing masks for, I don't know. So the meeting last week, Mr. Sprague, you asked, there were 2 nurses, I think they were the school district nurses, and they were discussing their protocols, and they obviously passed the buck on to DHS, and we follow DHS guidelines, we follow CDC guidelines, which I explained to you guys before. It's one of the easiest jobs because you don't have to take responsibility to say, oh, we're just following rules here, right? So part of their comment that you asked them was you were kind of asking them, how do we get out of this? Because the percentage was so low. And they said, well, wearing masks, cleaning, hand washing, social distancing, which we went from 6 feet to 3. I mean, come on, seriously. They said those mitigation factors are reasons why we're doing so good. Okay, give you that. But then why is Oak Creek only at 27 cases for the whole district and masks are optional? They don't quarantine. So how are their cases actually gone down? Their health department in Oak Creek actually recommended they go back into mask, and their school board said, no, we're good. And their cases are going down. Muskego, I was trying to look theirs up tonight. They do it weird. Every school there is under 5 kids. And one last thing I was going to say is, if our mitigation, according to your nurses, these mitigation factors are working, Milwaukee Public Schools have the same mitigation factors. They're in mask, hand washing, you have to cough into your shoulder or whatever. They now have another school that went virtual. So if it's working so great, why ain't it working for Milwaukee? Wouldn't this be like a universal thing that it works all the time? So I'm just saying, come on, are we gonna look into this? Let's move forward. Let's try to get these kids out of masks.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Penzer. Tina Bott-Jones, please.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
I can now, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm just here to advocate for one of the items that's on the agenda today, which is sunsetting the Inroads program. And I just wanted to come in here and bring some awareness and kind of understand what the goals were. And I'm sure as you listen to the presentation, it'll become very clear. So let me see. This is a very strategic and innovative program that Franklin High School has. So I was very surprised to see that it's being sunset for many, many reasons. The kids in this program, I feel, have benefited. So when you listen to the presentation, you'll hear about the stakeholders. I'm really interested in understanding who those stakeholders are, because to me, the stakeholders really are the students. Students, parents like me that really believe in this program, and I've seen what it can do for the students. And so I'm surprised that it's on the board agenda to be sunset. I'm also surprised because some of the things in that proposal today are not things that you can easily take from a group of 50 students or less and kind of implement it across all the students in the high school. There are some things you will be successful in doing, which I think we have. But when you put a group of 30 students who work day in and out for 4 or 5 days a week and get to know each other or planning on a pathway, I just don't see how you can take that and expand it and still have the same results. These students are in there, they have a very special focus, and they're very dedicated to what they're doing. Now, I understand there's some challenges. This program does have some challenges. And what I'm noticing is that we're trying to sunset it because we couldn't find solutions for those challenges. And I think we are, by having this program, this is a good thing. Other schools are trying to kind of get to this place, and we're trying to sunset it. And as I read through that proposal, I see, hey, we're planning to provide this to the rest of the students. That is great. By you saying that you're going to be able to provide that to the rest of the students is telling you that this program is working. There's something very special happening with these small students, a number of students that are working together, very high-performing students, if I may say. So I just want you to understand that this is something that we should advocate for. It is not something we should sunset. I do want to also, last thing, I don't know how much time I have. I do want to say that this is important for the students to give you feedback, parents to give you feedback. These are the stakeholders. If we want to build a better community, we want to build a better workplace, we have to understand how we can support this program and not sunset it. So that's kind of just advocating for it. I really feel it's not something we should sunset. I'm happy to send more emails with details if needed.
you.
That's it, thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Volo will address
Yes.
a lot of those questions as well and
Yes,
concerns.
yes. Thank you.
Sorry. Tamara Grobschmidt, please.
Hi, I'm Tamara Grobschmidt. I'm here also as a parent who has a child who was part of the Inroads program in her freshman year, but no longer is. Hearing about the Inroads program, at first glance, as an educator, it ticked off every box that I was looking for in an educational program for my daughter. The idea of it having reflective practices, the cohort model. She went from 8th grade, where they did have a cohort model, to having 9th grade, where it was a cohort model. It was a seamless transition into that same type of program. And if it's working in the middle school, why not provide an opportunity for some high school students to continue with that? I'll just say that the cohort model in the plan that will be proposed today, the advisory is supposed to substitute for that. Advisory is one gold block, which is approximately 45 minutes, 1 day a week. You're comparing that to 3 hours every other day, 3 to 4 hours every other day that these students are meeting and working together. It just doesn't match. Also, there is no course for leadership in the new teaching and learning course approval process for this coming, well, you'll be hearing that also today. I'd like to have you consider adding that. That was a really critical course. There is a great deal of attrition between the freshman year and the sophomore year. My daughter couldn't find a way to fit in her schedule a critical course for her career pathway. She really wanted to take a video production course, and if she were part of Inroads, she couldn't take that. That's like telling a student who has been playing an instrument, you can't be in band or orchestra, or in art, you can't be part of it. For my daughter, that was critical, and so she had to leave this program. And also, I think that it is important to note, which isn't reflected in this report at all, that the 4 teachers who were part of the Inroads program have all left prior to the school year. So if you would like to make sure that we are really considering that we are part of a better place to work, I think that this really needs investigation as to why these teachers weren't supported and continued on their employment at Franklin Public Schools. Last, a part of something that has nothing to do with any of these topics, I'm supporting the idea of a test to stay. Test to stay is something that's being implemented in many other school districts. Greendale, our neighboring school district, just did. And the idea is that students who are quarantined due to contact have an opportunity to test with a clinical setting on day 1, 3, 5, and 7. And if they test in the morning in a clinical way and produce a negative test, they're allowed to stay. I believe that having so many kids quarantining is causing disruption not only for those students, but also for the instruction, which impacts then the students who are there. And I think that if we provide this, this will be a better path forward. Going to what some of the other speakers said previously, if we go down that path, I think we need to find a way to make sure students are protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Winke, please.
Hi, I'm just taking my 3 minutes as a citizen and a mother of my kids. As you all know, I've homeschooled, and not because of the masks. I want that on the record. It was a bunch of little things from the district that had piled up, and the masks just made the final decision. The reason we're homeschooling this semester, and we don't know what we're doing going forward. However, speaking, I shared with you my daughter's schoolwork that was just junk. It was not a 4th grade level writing last month. Dr. Miller, I followed up with you, and you had said, and I believe it was something along the lines, I'd like you to provide me with some days that we can meet to talk about my concerns, my questions, and support in homeschooling. And I set up a meeting with you, and you invited Christine Cody and Dr. Malbury, and then we had a math and literacy specialist, but you were not there. I thought that was so disrespectful. I cannot believe that you did not show up and give me that time to talk to me about my concerns when you had invited me to have a meeting with you. With that being said, the meeting went as I expected. I had brought in samples of other students in my daughter's class who are now 5th graders, and it was atrocious. The handwriting, spelling, content, and the literacy specialist had said there was times where she'd have a student read back what they had written and the kid couldn't read it, and she said, we'd have a chuckle about it. A chuckle about not being able to read your own writing. So that was that stood out in my meeting with that one. So I thought you guys should be aware that we just laugh when our kids can't read their own writing. And I mean no disrespect to her because I don't know her. I know these teachers are here because they love our kids and want them to succeed. But again, I'm here, sitting here because I'm at home trying to get my kids caught up. And as I always say, my oldest is a different story. My youngest one hasn't been involved in the schools as long. It's my middle child who's been here 5 years that I'm trying to catch her up on. And it is a struggle. There are tears, there are frustrations, there are days I just want to throw my hands up because I feel like a failure as a parent, because I use Franklin Public Schools as a resource to educate my student, my child. And she's not where she should be. And I had asked why she wasn't flagged with her writing, and it was because none of her test scores flagged her as having a problem, because she met and exceeded from kindergarten to 4th grade. On every MAPS test, she exceeded the Franklin means average. So that means she can take a test. She can retain knowledge, she can answer some questions on a test and be above average in this district. But she cannot write a complete thought. Today or yesterday, her workbook for writing was to just write a paragraph, and they gave a topic sentence. She chose the one. The topic sentence was, I don't know much about fishing. And her sentence was, I don't know much about fishing, but I think you need a fishing pole and a tackle box and maybe something to put fish in. I think it's a cooler and maybe some patience. It was one sentence when she was supposed to write a paragraph. That is not acceptable. That is not 5th grade. I sat there today with a half hour and we broke up everything to get it to have a topic sentence, her little points, and the reason you would need these items. And it took us well over a half hour to write a paragraph that I thought was at least somewhat presentable at a 5th grade level. Again, you guys are looking at the curriculum and stuff like that. We need to teach these kids how to write, because writing is such an important form of communication for these children. And to just test them verbally between the child and the teacher, which is one way that they do it, is not the only way to do it, because writing is still important. You might say, oh, we have our computers, we have our spell check, but a complete thought on paper is vital to succeeding in this world. And I personally feel like a failure as a parent that I have failed my child. And I'm trying to make it up to her and my other kids as well. And my time is up. I appreciate it. Other than that, again, I'll probably be back here again. So
Thank you.
there you go. Have a great Thanksgiving, you guys.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sorry, item number 5, consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, school board announcements. Any board member have an announcement? Item 7, school board calendar, regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at the ECC at 6. Regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, January 12th, 2022 at the ECC at 6. District Administrator update. Dr. Miller, please.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to begin by indicating the board just completed their workshop this evening where they identified 2 strategic actions that will support the coherence plan and the key work of school boards. And just in a nutshell, they're going to be focusing on legislative advocacy, and they are focusing on, my memory's very short tonight.
Bidirectional community communication.
Yes, that's a very important thing.
Clarity.
On engaging with the community on occasions to receive and provide feedback. So thank you. I didn't write it down. At the meeting tonight, you'll hear about programming for next year and the updated curriculum review process, which is also aligned to our coherence plan tactics, which include high leverage instructional practices, high performing teams, and stronger community relations. This week, we were pleased to partner with Life Change Pharmacy to offer vaccine clinics, actually. One was yesterday, one's tomorrow, for children ages 5 to 11, and we held that at Forest Park Middle School. 148 children were vaccinated on Tuesday, and we're expecting another 150 tomorrow. We're all looking forward to the impact of this and what the impact it will have on mitigating COVID in our schools. The board is scheduled to reevaluate our current instructional plan in mid-January at their board meeting. I was honored to attend the Blue Ribbon Award ceremony with Principal Chad Nelson and Special Education Teacher Kelly Reilly last week. 312 schools were honored, and this was a great opportunity and privilege, and it was an honor. We heard from the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Education, Cindy Martin, about what Blue Ribbon schools have in common. I'm also pleased to announce that Franklin Public Schools is hosting the Traveling Wall of Healing to honor Vietnam veterans, June 28th to July 3rd at Franklin High School. I was able to see this permanent installation when I was in Washington, D.C., and I'm really honored to support this in our community. Other good news includes a recognition recently received by Mr. Chad Kafka, our communications specialist. Mr. Kafka received an award of excellence from the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association for his design and implementation of communications during COVID-19. Starting November 26th, the Franklin Education Foundation will be opening up their virtual auction. It was really successful last year, so they're repeating it. They are currently collecting items for the auction from local business partners. If you're interested in donating, you can just go to their website and contact Vicki Cordani. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that tomorrow is Veterans Day, and it is an important day of observance tomorrow in our schools and in our community and in our nation. I'd like to thank all the service members, past and present. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Item 9, reports, presentations, and other school board business. A, early college credit and Start College Now request approvals. Mr. Volo, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's always nice to get a return good evening, Mike. So, I provided you a memo that includes information regarding 20 different applications. So that's 20 applications. That could be a student to multiple locations or 20 different students to, all those different places. These courses have been vetted in terms of their comparability to courses we offer at Franklin High School and noted as approve or deny as a recommendation for your action. Remember, early college credit and Start College Now program courses we can deny if we offer a comparable course in our walls. So for example, if a student requests English 101, we offer AP Lang, we can say that's equivalent. So the courses that are marked for approval are courses that we would approve, that we do not offer. Courses that we would deny are courses that we do indeed offer. And students are told when they make their applications to select alternates and everything else in the event that A, they can't take it, or B, the courses are denied. 18 courses are currently being taken at the high school this year, and that's from the approvals last spring. 18, you approved, I believe, 125. So again, it's a long list always, but remember, students request more than they can take because they want to make sure they can get something in their schedule, and most students want to be at high school most of the day. So with that, I'll take any questions regarding the Early College Credit Start College Now program memo.
So, for anatomy, I see anatomy and psychology and lifespan psychology. Does this provide one college credit each?
So in that case, I believe it is 3 college credits. And each college credit transcripts back to our school as 0.25 high school credits. That's the equivalency. So 1 college credit is 1/4 high school credit. And in those cases, lifespan psychology is a 3-credit college class.
And so it's basically 0.25 credit for the students, and their students will be at MATC, to my understanding. So they'll be off the campus of the high school.
Yep.
Do they take any virtually?
That's more common. It wasn't a few years ago, but there are more students who will. In that case, some students will, if it's in the middle of the day, they'll go to the library media center and they'll just work there on their course. Other students still, will leave depending on the time of day. So when they have that in their schedule, the expectation is they don't have to be on campus for that. But again, students will be where they best can work and access, technology. And a student could take a night class if they so wanted. They could still have a release period in their day, even if it's a night class. Because again, 0.75 credits of a college class coming back to high school exceeds what you would typically get in a semester of a high school class. So some students go over and above, other students make it replace something that would have been part of their 4-period day on an A day or B day.
there seems to be a decline from certainly last year and previous years in the amount of students asking for this. Is that, am I right in that? And if I am, is there a reason for it?
I don't think there's a reason, Mike. You are correct. So last year, I believe we had 40 different applications in spring for this fall semester, and that was more typical, somewhere between 30 and 40, if I recall correctly. So this number is down a little bit. Some of the things, cohorts of math, for example, we have a group of students who, let's say, take Calculus BC as sophomores or juniors, and there's a large group, which our current senior class had a larger group last year. And many of those students took Calculus 3. Well, taking beyond Calculus 3, even taking Calc 3, no offense, like you don't really need it for most majors or academic pursuits. So taking linear algebra or differential equations would be kind of beyond the beyond. So oftentimes students, in those cases, like that might be a cohort of, again, let's say 8 to 10 seniors currently who were accelerated in math and would have taken more. So that's been different. But then I think the other parts are, in terms of why you would go off campus versus taking things on campus, we do offer 20 AP classes, and we are running classes this year in some areas that we haven't in previous years. That can include advanced courses in art, print shop, for example, printmaking, and the more courses we offer, the more kids stay on campus. So as we have those different capstones and experiences, we have a lot of our seniors in those. So I'm not saying that's a one-to-one answer to why, but again, I think kids want to take the things that we have, and if those aren't offered, then, they might go elsewhere. And again, there are students on here who take a ton of stuff off campus, and we have a student who exceeded 18 credits in summer because they started junior year, they took stuff in summer, and they finished up then. And, again, that student, bless them, they're doing what they want to do, and they're doing great.
Do you necessarily set a goal around this, or do you sort of just take it as it comes? We want to see more than 10 students apply, or we want to see less than 50. Just take it as it comes.
When we look at our college and career readiness indicators, we want every student to have the equivalent of a dual credit or college level class.
Okay.
But that could be an advanced placement class, that could be a transcripted class through MATC, like Microsoft Office applications or medical terminology. So when you look at the breadth of those courses, we offer many on campus, which would be the same equivalency as going off to that college or university. So for many students, it's a great opportunity to get a little taste of college life, in a very safe way. But, for other students, again, like they'd rather be on campus all day. So when you think about that, like, do we want every student to have a college level or beyond sort of class? Yes. Does it have to be this program? No. And again, we have so many opportunities on campus, you don't have to go elsewhere. So you could take Inspired Design, our food capstone, and those have college credit. Like those would be the equivalent of going to MATC, you can do it on campus. Or you can take AP Lang or AP US History. That's like going to Marquette and taking, English 101 or, US History, the first half and the second half combined.
Thank you.
I want to say I've never been a fan of this program. This, again, is one of those programs that state legislators dreamt up and kind of gave us and told us to do. I appreciate your comments on that, keeping kids on campus together and finish their high school here. So I'm perfectly happy to have this go away if that were to happen. There's many, it diverts our resources to other places that kids aren't benefiting from it here. So I think we're doing just fine. I appreciate the feedback on how many actually go, because these are just all approvals. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take. So 18, that's fine.
Is there a way that that could be followed up on when we know how many, we approve them in the fall twice a year, and we don't know how many they're going to take, or how many are taken until, I don't know, probably the start of the semester, but.
Yeah, we could create a memo and send that to you.
And I could include the number taken, and I can give you the success, the number that, vast majority are successful. And remember, as a district, we, have it in our policy, which is allowed by state statute, where we do ask students and families, we tell them when they sign up, if you don't successfully complete it, we do expect you to, compensate us for the tuition that you, had us pay. So that is something that's built into our policy in practice as well.
And maybe something that could be included in this memo. I
Yep.
don't know that we need a new one, but
Yeah, so like I could have the fall data with the spring requests and vice versa. Sort of like, here's the number of courses taken, just make that part of it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And my last question is, because when the student is on the campus, we are able to monitor their progress. They're able to see, have input from the teachers at the same time, which reflects their GPA and etc. But when they're offsite, and how is that communication between the school and the, for example, MATC happening where students' performance is being monitored? Because you can just have a passing grade and still take a course. So is it kind of, so how do we make sure that this resource which we're spending on the student is optimally utilized?
Yeah, I'd say that's a great question. And MATC actually has taken the most intentional or the most steps to try to make sure that every high school student they have is successful. And I'm not suggesting that UW Milwaukee or Marquette or MSOE or El Verno don't have that same mindset. However, MATC has, made that a charge for when you have a student who's not a typical student, who is a high school student, they have a liaison who's assigned to Franklin High School, who we can, ask specifically, say, how are students doing? And they work really hard. It's not perfect, but they work really hard to try to give us feedback along how those students are achieving in their courses. Knowing that, the diversity of college faculty and everything else, there's some professors who probably embrace that, and there's others who maybe have a harder time communicating and looking at their students differently. We get far less information from the four-year colleges and two-year UW colleges regarding our students' progress until the grade report comes out. That said, our students tend to do really well, but there's not a, part of it is the, byproduct of, colleges, suggesting that students, once they're 18 especially, it's their academic record and achievement. It's not yours as a parent. It's not yours as a school. We would say we pay for it. So, like they give us grades and everything else, but progress along the way has been slow coming, if non-existent in many cases. And again, that would be more the four-year schools, the colleges, universities. But MATC has taken some really strong steps because we have so many students who go there as well. And I appreciate that.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the spring 2022 early college credit and start college now requests as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, Education for Employment Plan Update and Inroads Program. Mr. Volo, Ms. Neese, and Ms. Sundstrom, please.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Mo, for having the presentation. There's not much on the slides. It'll be relatively brief. And, I appreciate all the, input and, comments we had today. And the report will be designed where I'll stop. The headings that'll be on the screen will really be headings that correspond with the sections of the report that you have access to. And then we'll stop after each section that I speak on and take questions, additional comment, leading towards our Education for Employment Plan, which is part of this report, as well as our final recommendation. So along the way, I'll talk about each heading or subheading, and then ask you for questions pertaining to that particular section. Okay. All right, so with that being said, the first section on there, the history and purpose of Inroads. Inroads began in 2014. As we speak tonight, in many ways, there's a bit of a celebratory nature to something that started as an innovation incubator for personalized learning at Franklin High School, in part in response to, remember, in 2013, the state of Wisconsin required that academic career planning happen in every school district. So ACP, as we call it, was not something that was common in schools anywhere, right? And Act 20 that did that said by 2017-18, all schools must have academic career planning for your 6 to 12 students. We've been doing great at that. That's not something that has been, a small celebration. It's something that lives in our district, beyond the high school. We talk about Inroads specifically in 2014. It was started and it had no cap or limit to the number of students who could participate in it. The first group had about 150 students, who jumped in that first cohort. Starting in 2017, the cohorts were limited to 50 students max per grade level. So that'd be freshmen and sophomores. So that would have been my first year of Franklin High School, 2017, and that cap was set in 2016-17. The items listed that you saw, leadership skills, employability skills, academic career planning, and interdisciplinary connections in the cohort model, those 4 things were the focus then from 2017 to present. And we determined that my first year as part of an inroads planning team to say, what do we want to make sure we focus on? Because in its first few years of work, it had been many things involving many staff and many focus. However, those were the things we focused on these last 4 years into its 5th year, trying to make sure that we have consistency in terms of what we're aiming for with our students and our staff. The core sequence is shared there also is corresponded and followed by the enrollment. And you can see that my first year at Franklin High School, the enrollment had a large cohort that was the sophomores, and then it had a smaller cohort that was the freshmen. The cohort presently, we have a freshman cohort of 50 and a sophomore cohort of about 33. And when we look at those 2 groups together, that gives us the 83 current students. And then numbers, that went, kind of up and down over the past, handful of years. Remember, that's a combined cohort. The staffing that you saw as well represents something that was a focus and intentional, bump up from my first year to my second year. In 2020-21, the reason the staffing went down was because of the pandemic. And when we created a virtual school within our school, that affected all staffing at the high school. So there was staff that were less in inroads and more doing other things as well. As we had social studies teachers, world language teachers, English teachers teaching virtual sections. So when we did those things, that impacted inroads the same way it impacted other parts of the high school as we increased, our staffing in other ways to make sure we had a virtual program. But that particular historical piece in the last 5 years have really continued to lead to a consistent focus that's allowed us to scale several successes. But that being said, I'd like to take questions about the history in that particular section of the report before we move on to successes and scaled practices.
One question I have is just the nature of the Inroads program initially as being an incubator program. I wonder if you could, do you think it's fair to say that that's how it was presented to parents and students, as this is sort of a trial balloon? No, I shouldn't say trial balloon. This is an incubator program that, may be truncated at some point.
I would say, although if I speak to some of the staff and administrators who are founding it, and they said it was never meant to be something that lasts forever. That being said, I don't think that, once something exists and once something exists for multiple years, rarely do things stop, in practice. How often do we stop doing something in education? So when you say that, I would say, I don't think it was presented as something that, we're going to do this for a period of time and then stop, because there really wasn't a long-range plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no plan that talked about what it would be 5 years from its beginning or 10 years from its beginning. And this in part, speaks to that, because we're not talking about stopping something this year. We're talking about something that, ends in, a graduating class in 2025. So when we think about those things and that idea of personalized learning, for example, personalized learning is something that was very topical in 2014. And I'm not suggesting it's not a great idea, but it means so many things to so many people. It's not in and of itself a, evidence-based teaching practice, it's a idea. So as we talk about what we do in our classrooms, right, and the practices that we really, continue to do, those things that came from inroads, for example, students, articulating a career pathway that they had to do as part of those first cohorts. Every student had to have a biomedical, marketing, or engineering focus. Then became something every student, was able to access similar things. And students inroads did not have to have a declared, pathway or sort of purpose. So that program has evolved. So in terms of what it is and what it's been, why students are there, how it's marketed to them has changed probably many times. I'd say the last 4 years, it was somewhat more consistent in terms of here's what it is, because we set out and said, here's the priorities for this program in 2017-18, and that's allowed us to at least market it consistently for these past 4 years.
I'll be interested to hear your thoughts as you continue about how sort of managing different expectations of what it was meant to be will be managed as you propose your plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I might just add, though, as a board member watching this program over the years, I would say it did surprise me to read that we were considering a sunset of this program, because I thought it was going well. It was one of the ones when I went to the high school to visit for the open house thing, I deliberately went to that session because I was very interested in how it worked. Because one of the unique things is that it does combine English and social studies together to, again, and make it more relevant. And it was exciting. And there seemed to be a lot of excitement in the room at that time. There were new teachers assigned to the program. They were very happy to be here. And there were parents there also that were very excited about it. It was very well supported. So after that experience and now here, hearing where we're at, I'm sure you're going to explain. And I understand the taking aspects of it and scaling it to, so I'll let you continue.
Please.
Okay, going to successes and scaled practices. So we look at some of the things that have been not just common experiences, but things that really started through Students for Inroads. You know, we talk about community-based learning experiences. Remember, as a college career readiness indicator, so that can be as deep as an internship. It can be as minimal as a job site visit, right? So all those are collected in that category of a community-based learning experience, or what we commonly said 2 years ago, a career-based learning experience. I apologize, the number was cut off on your copy in the PDF. That's my fault. 934 was the number of career-based or community-based learning experiences in 2021. So 934 last year, and that's even with a global pandemic where we could not have students taking field trips, and you know, we had virtual guest speakers and mentors were challenged in terms of how they came in. So we still had 934, you know, experiences last year, and that's with college visits and everything else being truncated as we all figured out how to navigate, you know, in that new world. So the first semester especially, you know, was very, very challenging, but we still had 934 experiences last year, which reflects, you know, last year. Go ahead, Linda.
And how do you count that? Is that like one visit? Is it?
It can be. Yep. So if a class conducts mock interviews, right, that number of students, so let's say it's a business class with 60 kids and they conduct mock interviews, that would be 60 community-based learning experiences, the category mock interviews.
So it's not unique students?
Nope, no, it's not. If you look at, if one class takes 3 visits, that class would count, you know, 3 times the number of students in that class. But that being said, you know, this would represent, you know, if students from a welding class go to Crohn's, that would count, right? Or if they have a guest speaker come in and speak to a marketing class, that counts. So all those are tracked. And again, it really depends on, you know, we have to get that information from our staff in terms of the experiences that are happening in our classes. And the challenge and the opportunity is really how to make that part of core classes that more and more students have. So as I gave a tour today to a prospective freshman, hopefully he chooses to come to our school, you know, they asked, do we get to take electives? I'm like, yes, you have to take electives, you know, because at most you have 4 required core courses plus, you know, Phi-Ed. If you include world languages, maybe a 5th core. That's 3 credits left or 2.5 credits left. That's a lot of semesters of stuff to take as a freshman. So you're going to have to try things. So many of these experiences, Linda, tend to be through those elective courses. Fewer of these experiences come through English, math, social studies, and science, with the exceptions being some of the science courses that I think are tied more directly to the community or other areas, like environmental science, for example, or AP environmental science. They do a lot of great connections and career connections, or maybe forensic science. But, you know, how do we make this live in U.S. history, world history? You know, the courses students have to take, not just the elective students choose to take.
But how does a student, initiate a visit? I mean, where along the way does a student say, you know, I want to check out this job?
So they typically don't. And one of the things that, you know, like as we talk about, like the exception to that would be field study. So our field study students, the students who are juniors right now, right, through Inroads, those students articulate, I want to see this. I want to job shadow this person in this occupation. And we try to get them 2 job shadows. We try to make sure that every one of those students is able to have an internship or an apprenticeship their senior year. It's not required, but it's hoped for. So when we think about those experiences, right, and that sort of initiative, we had last year 172 students earn employability skills certificate, 172. That means we had 172 internships or apprentices. That's a pretty significant number of students between juniors and seniors. Those students come across our entire high school. So we talk about students initiating. It is in some respects students saying, I want to get credit for doing this thing, but also it's students knowing what they want to try and learn more about. So we talk about that. it really does become that piece of, how do we give students different opportunities and make that part of their high school experience that maybe is part of what we expect graduates to do. And what does that look like then? So, how do we have a community experience coordinator serve, 400 students in a graduating class to help every student, like you said, initiate and say, I want to do a job shadow here. I want to do a visit here. Because students can do all sorts of research about jobs. It's great. They can hear guest speakers. Great. But the best thing students ever say to me is, I went to a workplace and I heard someone talk about their job. I saw them do their job. I thought I want to be in front patient care, and turns out, Mr. Rillo, I don't. So I still want to go to the medical field, but not that. Or I don't want to go into this at all. I thought I did for 4 years. And now as a senior, I'm saying nope, because I finally got to see someone doing it. Because again, your theoretical self versus the practical self, to see someone in the office or be there is entirely different. But we had employers, for example, in the business park asking us for students to be accounting interns this year. So when I think about that, we have students in 3 sections of accounting and 2 sections of advanced accounting. That's, 5 classes worth of kids who are potentially the labor, who can get that experience and meet a demand for our community, right? I mean, those things are things that, like students have opportunity for. We have carpentry companies asking us for students to come and work for them. So there's so many different things. Students have so many options, Linda. How do we help them know they're there and then take advantage of them? Because if you're a parent of a student and you know all the things we have, you're going to get those things. But we have many students and families who aren't necessarily aware of the opportunities that we have or that these experiences exist.
So have we figured out how to do this? I know you.
Are you going to answer your rhetorical question?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the education for employment plan. I mean, that's really the work, is how do we make sure that every student and family knows those things? Because if you look at our course planning guide and all the things in it, it's, 90 pages, 100 pages, hasn't changed that much in terms of that volume. So unless you're an engaged parent and engaged student, right, it's not enough to simply ask for information after something happens. You have to know information before it happens. So the early college credit proposals that we talked about, all those different things, I know we're going to get a bit abreast here, but we have to make people understand those things and not just have an awareness, but then actually have the opportunities and the experiences. Because just awareness does not close that, success gap that we have. And again, like saying 172 students had internships, that's only 172 out of 2 classes, juniors and seniors, right? So that's roughly 750 kids. It's not that many when you look at it that way. It's certainly not close to 100%. But to that point, career-based learning, right, has scaled dramatically, and it's scaled beyond just, a cohort of 30 kids or 50 kids. In addition, I had mentioned that every student in En-ROADS had to define a career pathway when they joined initially. In 2017, that was open.
Mike,
Oh,
you
yeah.
said 172 of the students got employability certificates,
Yep.
not all in En-ROADS.
Correct.
How many were in En-ROADS or not in En-ROADS?
So of those, and again, I can tell you that we had 2 students earn a leadership certificate last year in the graduating class, so 2 leadership certificates. That would be 2 students from En-ROADS out of a cohort of a little less than 30. Of the 172, right, so think of a class, so you have about 50 kids total in there, and about 2/3 of those students earn that certificate, typically. So most En-ROADS students will be an intern, not all, but most.
Okay, so what's the number?
So I don't have the exact number, Mike, or excuse me, Alan, but I believe it is about 2/3 of the classes typically that are interns in En-ROADS. We say it's a requirement to be an intern or apprentice when you graduate from En-ROADS, but we don't have an actual means of requiring it to be done.
Oh, so you're saying 2/3 of the En-ROADS classes
Correct.
were interns?
Correct.
And so let's say
Or apprentices.
okay, or apprentices, apprentices.
So
So that-
2/3 of 172?
No,
No,
2/3 of 30, or 2/3 of 28, or 2/3 of a graduating class from that.
Question was on
So the
the
majority of those
certificate.
internships were non-En-ROADS children.
Was your
Yes.
question on certificate, though, the employability certificate?
So if you're saying 172, and I'm going to
Well, he did
guess
say
about,
172 got employability certificates.
Yep.
Yep.
so
Same.
so if we have 172 employability skills certificates and we have 40, let's say, apprentices,
Mhm.
so we have about 212, about 40 of those kids will be En-ROADS kids.
There we go. That's what you wanted.
Yes.
Thank you.
How do you get that certificate? Is that only offered as part of an inroads course?
Nope. So that would be any intern. So if somebody's working for you in the community and you're Alice Roller, the student curates a portfolio of their demonstration of certain skills like collaboration or, their ability to think flexibly and responsibly. And then they tell you, hey, I believe I demonstrated this. You give them a rating between 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the best. They have to have more 2s and 3s than 1s, no 1s. They have to work 90 hours in a semester, so 180 hours in a year. And if they do those things to satisfaction, they curate that evidence, and you agree to it as their mentor, then we can sign off on it and say they've earned that. So the student really works with their employer to say, here's what I've done to demonstrate these employability skills. And again, those skills, it's part of a Wisconsin credential that exists. And they're not that different if you would make a list of, or go to a business alliance or, Chamber of Commerce or any number of groups that say what do employees need. It's very much those things.
Mike, so,
Yep.
We definitely want to provide each and every student the platform to succeed, whether it's job or it's college, So we want to be fair to all the students. At the same time, be able to individualize students' desires and aspirations. So if indoors program is able to cater to the students, at the same time, as you said, you want to kind of, with the current proposal of expanding to all the students, seems to be fair. But at the same time, how do we balance this, that you want to provide this platform to all the students, but at the same time catering the individual needs?
It's a good question. I mean, like in terms of, I would say individualization, like these things, and again, like those experiences are more unique than, like one would think. And the thing that really becomes special and confined inroads, I know I'll speak to when I say what's not scaled, but those things become less and less different, or maybe in one ways more stark in their difference, because they're the things that we have a plan to scale for the system. But again, the things we're trying to scale are not, and again, Linda, you mentioned the social studies and English. I would say that of all the things that we've done in inroads for the past 5 years, that's a thing that, social studies still look like social studies, English look like English, like largely. And interdisciplinary teaching is not in any way bad, but also that's not a thing that's going to increase achievement of our students per se. It's the practices we use that help students transfer skills across courses. But when we talk about these different things, like I want to speak to like how we take those things and then balance that individualization. But really, when you think about these learning experiences or these capstone experiences, every student has a different path through high school, right? Every single one. And it's really helping students know, and again, I have an advisory of a smaller group now because some of my advisees became peer mentors and some other things. But the seniors I started with, I have a student who has an early commit to the Marines who's ready to graduate at semester and go through basic training, in which case she'll be at graduation. If she can't graduate early, she won't be at graduation because she'll be deployed. However, I also have a student who told me about her first 2 college acceptances, today. And like I have a range of students in my advisory. Every one of those students has a different plan. I have one who wants to go into a medical imaging program through Aurora and says, I'm going to do these 2 years at Oshkosh, then I'm going to do this program. Every kid has their own path, and every kid can articulate that. But for those students, right, that's not because of any given program. That's because of the work we've done with them for 4 years, or even more than 4 years if they're a product of Franklin Public Schools or private school before that because their families and the schools they came from. So I would say that all those are individualized, without being in a program per se.
Mike, can you explain what you mean by scaling? Because
Yep.
I couldn't follow it, and when I looked it up in the dictionary, it talked about fish and what something weighs,
So
but nothing could I
as a
get to understand what you're trying to say.
as a person with a fishing merit badge, the scaling in this case is not nearly as messy or as unpleasant as scaling a bluegill, for example, or a crappie. But that being said, scaling in this case is trying to make something that we can have apply to 1,570 kids, right? Something that students experience on scale. When I say scale, I mean every student at high school. So not,
It's expanding what you're doing.
yes, yes,
That would have been a good word.
sorry.
Maybe you should have looked in the.
My business teachers told me they loved it. They love hearing scale.
Oh,
Well, they're all fishermen, what can you say?
all right.
And the section around capstone courses, remember, a capstone course, while we have 8 of those at present, we also have experiences that culminate in and many pathways that are not capstones. And the reason that is because they might not have all those, materials or, components met there. So they might not have a transcripted course yet or a credential yet. But we have over 20 AP classes, including AP Capstone. We have Autos 2 students who can do amazing things and rebuild cars and motorcycles. We have advanced video production. We have Construction 2 students in the community building a house. And those are not capstones per se, but those are all things kids get to do, including our, saber manufacturing, which is a capstone, or our foods or inspired design or child education courses. But then we also have all these other things that don't meet that criteria, but are still great programs for our students. And students love those opportunities. And although they might not have all the components of a capstone, those are things kids, have a culminating experience in a given area. So a student in Autos 2 this year is going to be able to earn a certificate for the first time in a long time. Mr. Bondar is going to have them earning certain things, which then make them employable as mechanics in the real world. And I mean, it's really great stuff that they're doing. So again, I highlight the capstone courses there, and we have 8 of them at present, but also I'd highlight that we have additional courses in advanced placement and beyond advanced placement, Project Lead the Way, think of those pathways, engineering, which could be a capstone, right, as well as medical innovations. But when you think about these things, many opportunities for students. And then another scale piece that we've had is increased community partnerships. So the Saber Business Alliance started in 2017-18. And although we had limits last year, I did highlight that our total partners last year still increased, due in large part to the work of our community experience coordinator, Rachel, as well as our teachers who continue to make those connections with, community members. They want people to be in their classrooms working with our students. And even under the most, difficult circumstances, they continue to find ways to engage our community and our partners to do so. And I say community in a larger sense. It can be Franklin or even beyond Franklin, because we are part of Southeast Wisconsin and a larger state and community. Employability skills are those things demonstrated through those internships and apprentices. So again, I highlighted that number of 172 before, but again, that speaks to all the students who are able to do that. And then cohorting, I understand the comment made around cohorting not being the same as having students be in the same class together. I would contend the largest thing about cohorting is not always just the students you're with, but it's the relationship with an adult who is somebody who checks in with you and over the course of 4 years, not just 2 or 1.5, continues to check in along your progress. So when I say I confer with my students weekly, I do get to confer with my students weekly. So for those students I've been with since they were freshmen, it really is a remarkable thing to see them as seniors explaining what their steps are. And whether it's me reminding them, did you get that college application essay done like you said you would? No? Okay. Or hearing they're going to do their fitness test for a military academy this Saturday, and hopefully they can do all that fun stuff in a half hour. That adult who cares about a student, the more people there are in the students' corners, the more likely it is a student successful in high school and beyond, right? And that piece of academic career planning as a principal, it's part of my job to make sure that those students, all the ones I have in my advisory, are successful at school, whether or not they're behaving in class, earning grades, et cetera. I mean, that's part of that work. And that doesn't stop, at a certain point in their career. That continues throughout their career. So this week was grade reports from Q1, as well as updates about what they're thankful for, because it's around Thanksgiving, sending personal messages out to people who did great stuff for them. But advisory is something that I'm passionate about prior to and at Franklin, because it's something that absolutely positively builds assets in our students. And the number of students I have in my advisory, again, I have one of the most diverse advisories in the school. I have students in every type of program you can imagine. It really is an amazing part of our day to do that. And I'd argue there's stuff that we all have to do to be better, to be advisors, because every teacher didn't go to school to be somebody who does that work or understands career planning or conferring that same way. Yeah, Angie.
That's actually what my question is about. What kind of, so if we're going to be sort of relying on a broad swath of teachers to be filling this advisory role, what type of support and training are you going to be providing them to make them good advisors?
Yeah,
because
so,
not everyone comes by that naturally.
And every teacher and staff member, so that's every administrator, member of student services, I think the only people who haven't really, we've not expanded it to like our resource officer or educational assistants in our system. However, that piece of like there are strategies you can do for conferring like in a capital C sense, running circles or other practices that help groups work together, and really having that plan where, again, it's stuff, you don't become a school counselor, so I'm not asking you to be that person, but you can be aware of the things that kids are being asked to do. So it's having information and it's showing that care and concern around that. In terms of being an asset builder, there's things you do in conferring in terms of consistency of questioning, as well as just, like that practice of building trust and credibility and everything else that lets somebody know that you're on their team. And again, like it's small ways. It's attending meetings like IEPs if you're invited and a student happens to have that, or being part of parent-teacher conferences, who, like you might not think to be there as an advisor and checking with teachers and parents, but like sending that invite out saying, I'd love to see you at conferences because I'm your child's advisor. Introductions to the families every semester. All those different things that we do, not just because, I have to see you once a week and we talk about your schedule, but building that. So this year, focusing on conferring, focusing on things that you do individually to make sure you check in with kids. That's the large focus this year, like that one skill, because that's vitally important.
And you're providing training on that, or? Oh, okay.
So everybody's trained on that, because everybody is an advisor, I mean. not
Yes,
everybody-
and
Everybody who's an advisor, I assume everybody is.
everybody is,
Okay.
yeah. But everybody needs to, like we all have a continuum, like a practice. So we talk about evidence-based practices. It's getting better from where we are. So like if you're not as comfortable doing those things yet, like it's getting comfortable doing it. And really trying to make sure, just the way we do in our classrooms, like some people are really good at certain parts of practice. We want everyone to grow from where they are and not just have that consistency of, yes, we expect this, but also let's get better at it. Because I can tell I'm a better advisor now than I was 4 years ago or I was 7 years ago. Because again, it requires intentional time, planning, and practice. But our students need feedback along the way. They need support, and they need you to show that you're reliable, that you have that credibility in a teacher sense.
And how many students in each advisory?
Between about 15 and 20. So like, again, I lost some this year because of peer mentors. So when they become seniors, kids get pulled out and they get assigned to freshman advisories to serve as a peer mentor. So I lost 2. And by loss, I mean, it means I have to find them some other way to check in with them.
Would you say that where the advisors are this year is sort of like going to be square one?
I would say, well, maybe square 2. So I'd say we're further along than we were a few years ago, but this is the starting point. And then again, it's resetting next year and continuing to go. Last year was, I'd say, well-intentioned to not have advisory and gold block, but also extremely challenging to not have that cohort. So our sophomores are experiencing it really for the first time.
Yeah.
Our freshmen obviously as well. Our juniors only had it for about 2/3 of a year,
Okay.
their sophomore year. So
All right, thank you.
Does you're talking about the kids having their individual plan and having this, each kid makes their plan. Is that more of an advisor's job? Like if you, as an advisor, are you checking with your kids to make sure they have a plan and they're picking out their classes and kind of following that plan? Or is that more the school counselor? And if it's more of a counselor role, how often are they meeting to make sure that they're on this path or this track and making sure they're meeting all those expectations?
it's both, Ann. And ultimately, our school counselors are responsible for, they're 1/4 of our student population. They have touch points with our students at least once a year, and they do an incredible job of it. And I know that as a parent in another district, our counselors have more one-on-one time with our students and families than is typical in many public schools. That being said, school counselors are, one person for a course load of 100, or excuse me, 1/4 of our student population. So in terms of that, yes, they still do a lot of heavy lifting with our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. They're planning, and seniors as well. Junior conferences are happening. They're, going to be wrapping up relatively soon, but those are ongoing throughout the first quarter and second quarter. When we talk about those things that counselors do, we augment that, right? We add to that. Because if we're waiting for a school counselor to come to my class and, talk to somebody about what the course offerings are, that's one person holding all that information who comes for one day, and then they go away. And then people have to reach out, make an appointment. Our counselors are great. They do a great job. But again, the more that we can all embrace that understanding, know the big major portions of academic career planning, and know our students, the better off it is for every kid. And again, like, we're consistent along with school counselors across the students' 4 years as an advisor. So in terms of like who's on your team, you have your teachers every year, right? And then you have school counselor, advisor, and really look at those two working in conjunction. In terms of components that need to be scaled, the two things here, leadership is one. So leadership skills, again, there's more to life success than just academic knowledge. If you would look at a, collection of different, college mission statements, most of those mission statements would speak of things beyond just you learned a bunch of stuff, right? Like, that's what that taxonomy would tell you. If you look at employability skills from any occupation, it's not going to be just, are you technically able to do the job? Can you communicate? Can you think? Can you collaborate with other people, right? Those are the things we're talking about. So leadership skills, I mentioned 2 certificates were earned last year. Last year was challenging. However, right, the idea of having a defined set of skills that go beyond academics, right, beyond academic standards that we expect every graduate from Franklin Public Schools to have is something, right, that we want to have. The Wisconsin Leadership Skills Certificate is something that we used in inroads. And I would contend that, when we think about practice, we have to have habits, dispositions, and skills beyond the academic that are part of every class, where students receive feedback, not just self-reflection, but feedback. And they demonstrate those things by doing certain things over the course of 4 years. And that'll be an Education for Employment plan. We'll talk about something called a profile of a graduate, but that's something that has not been scaled beyond inroads, right, in the slightest. And again, we have a plan to do that. The pathway experiences, these would be things like college visits, workplace visits, et cetera, especially for grades 9 and 10, and to a large part 11 in field study. So when we think about college visits, workplace tours, job shadows, mock interviews, if they exist in some elective classes beyond inroads. However, right, we have to have things that we do for every student. And again, it's not just the frequency of experience and number, right? We could bring the entire freshman class on a visit to a place and say, check, we had every freshman do that. That's not what we're looking for. We're going to look for quality, right, and depth of experience. To make sure that students have things that help them understand, through their academic career planning, but also through their courses. Here's what post-secondary options are. Here's what workplace options are that every student, has. And again, it's great that students in inroads, for example, can go to UWM and do a tour for those students, right? And I wish that, it wasn't just 33 students in the sophomore cohort who were able to do that. Right? And that's really the challenge that we have to do, is find ways to scale those with making those experiences meaningful at the same time. Because I can tell you that, like, I have students who, like, they know what they want to do, and their apprenticeship is not, going to be served by going to that 4-year school. But we want every student to open doors through their time at Franklin High School and have their eyes open, not doors closed and unawareness. But those are the components that have yet to be scaled at inroads. Yeah, Angie.
So just to clarify for me, so when you say yet to be scaled, that means they will be scaled?
That's the how is really an Education for Employment plan, and like that piece, and understand that we talk about the plan. Our coherence work lasts for 3 years.
Yep.
The Ed for Employment plan has 2 strategic priorities for this upcoming year, and every year we'll look and have 1 or 2 priorities for the next upcoming year. So, in this first year, I think there's a couple things that we do for sure to try to, again, continue to take things and grow from while we continue to learn from the work we're doing. And in terms of the state of the program, Angie, we have a cohort or 2 or 3 to continue to work from and learn from, and we have staff. So when I talk about what we're doing, right, the work is still there to make an exceptional experience for the class of 2024, 25, right, and 23 who are in this program, right? Just like it's imperative that we take our current seniors who had been in inroads and make sure they finish strong, and they complete leadership if they were able to. They finish their internships or apprenticeships if they have those, even though they don't have an inroads course per se. So as we think about that, that work doesn't stop regardless of your action today. And we talk about those things, right? It really is something where, starting from a place that had unlimited students then has been limited, the state of the program, really speaks to that, where having a lottery for an experience is a really hard thing to do as a high school administrator. Running a thing that says these students get to do it, these students don't, right? That's a tough thing to do. And while the things that we're doing have been scaled and the things that we're doing are not doing, we just talked about, it really is imperative that, the stuff that's inroads only, we find ways to make it beyond inroads only. I
How
mean, that-
many, I'm just curious, did you have to say no to a lot of students?
So this year we had more than 50 applicants, and I believe the wait list, I want to say it was about 10, but I'd have to double check. My computer fell asleep, sorry.
So will there be a course called leadership ever?
There could be. So when we think about our planning, if we explore course pathways or we explore other things, that's something that we can create. And if we did, right, I mean, there's ways to do that. There's actually college courses we could teach that are leadership courses that we transcripted and offer on campus. But again, like I would say that exploring those options every year, similar to what, we'll talk about with Ms. Sundstrom in a little bit, there's no shortage to what we can do. We just have to make sure then it fits in our, here's a priority, here's what we want to do. The same way if we wanted to offer a different career pathway or, expand something based on our job market and our students' interests, right, we can do it. We just have to commit to it and do it and staff it and build it. So absolutely, there's no reason we can't, if that's something that, we think is a priority.
Why do we limit it to 50?
50, so, and again, like this is my understanding because some of it is before my time, but when it was unlimited and, there was a bit of churn and it kind of changed from year to year, capping it, I believe, was done in order to have consistency of focus where, especially with the staff and the students, everybody knew what they were going to get and experience over the course of their inroads experience. So capping it at 50 allowed for stability of staffing, right? Some surety of here's how many people we have. The surety of staffing allowed for focus and professional development and curriculum time and everything else to build that experience out. And if you had that number flex from 30 to 120, it really became challenging to do that every year, to scale it every year.
30 to 120 would be difficult.
Yeah.
But you said there were 60 people, and why couldn't you have taken 60?
We capped it at 50. I mean,
but
in that sense.
There are caps on attendance in different classes. That's a board policy. But there's no board policy on anything like this, is there? It was just an arbitrary number that was chosen, 50.
I think you have to identify how it's staffed. So an inroads classroom has 2 teachers. So instead of 1 teacher, there are 2. So it's double the FTE for inroads than it is for a traditional class. So if you were not to cap it at all, you would hire many more teachers because it's 2 teachers where there would be 1 normally.
Okay, but how many students are those 2 teachers teaching?
50.
Well, we'd have to go up to 75,
Well,
right?
it's
Is
not
that
50
what you're
because
saying?
you have marketing, you have all these different things that they can go into.
But those don't happen in that core program.
Yeah.
And that's the definition that we did when we said this is what the experience is. Took
Okay.
a lot of those, because initially there was engineering teachers in it and marketing teachers, and they were all in and out of the program. And the basic part these last 5 years has been, yes, they get those experiences through electives, and Inroads guarantees these core
So the
experiences.
core experiences
Yep.
are what?
And the core experience would be English and U.S. history as a sophomore, English and world history as a freshman, seminar as a freshman for a year, seminar as a sophomore for a semester, and then field study as a junior for a semester. Those are the courses that are guaranteed for those students. And then they're encouraged to take other things, of interest beyond that. But to your point of why 50 and why not 51 or 52 or 53, I mean, there's not a great reason, but again, 60, you can't have 60 kids in a classroom. Even though it's a big classroom, that would be like too many for one space. But at some point, we have to say this is the number. And I can't tell you there's magic between 50 or 51.
Okay,
But once you have 60, you now have 4 teachers
why?
because it's 2 teachers that teach at the same time in this program.
Okay, but going from 50 to 60 doubles the number of teachers? I don't understand that.
Classes, yeah.
Classes, you have 2 classes then going on, so it's 4 teachers.
Why can't it just be more kids in the classroom?
We don't have a big enough classroom, Linda.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't put 60 kids in a classroom.
Okay.
But if you found the space, you could.
I mean, sure, but again, I would say that we're getting into different, things there in terms of like we could teach in the auditorium as well. I don't think that's great practice. It could fit any number of kids though.
It's
not
definitely,
really applicable to
yeah.
the.
it's definitely it's a good program, but what's good there should apply to all kids. It shouldn't just be some kids. You know, we have a core value of equity and we talk about access and opportunity. We have learned what we needed to learn in this program, and we do need to scale it to all kids and not just provide this to a small number of kids.
Should we have a better idea of how to scale what we need to scale, what we haven't figured out how to scale yet? Should we have a better idea of that before we decide to sunset it?
It doesn't sunset for 3 years.
I understand that, but we're deciding today, right?
Or don't we have to decide today?
Well, you can't take another class in because then you're adding another year to it.
And
This is
just,
saying we're not going to enroll any more kids in it.
and in terms of the how, if we look at the education performance plan and that first strategic action, when we refreshed that last year, we have always actions that continually occur, right? And we can talk more about the details of the plan if you want to talk about any of the always actions. But I'd highlight strategic action 1, developing a profile of a graduate. A profile of a graduate for a district serves to take what you expect students to graduate being, right? And that could be things like collaboration, critical thinking, right? Any number of things. But when districts have that, it exists from pre-K to 12 to help every staff member know what our students are becoming and being, right? So it takes beyond just the core academics. So we talk about leadership skills, and leadership skills, I understand like that phrase is great. And again, when you break those skills down and talk about the things those students are doing, right, freshman and sophomore year, and hopefully beyond that, right, those are things that when we look at profile of a graduate, whether it's habits of mind, leadership skills, employability skills, we look at any number of collections of outcomes, habits, mindsets, dispositions, skills, and we can create our own. This is what we believe a Franklin graduate is. And that can be a collaborative process involving multiple people, students, staff, community members, who can help us define what that means to be ready. And then we can give students feedback on that across their school experience, not just at the high school, but before the high school, where every student can say, I'm going to be this. I'm working on my flexible thinking. I'm working on my empathy. I'm working on whatever the things are we say they are, right? And I'm not suggesting leadership skills are wrong, but again, that's a framework, right? So a profile of a graduate can be something that can give a district that comprehensive vision of what our graduates include beyond the core academic skills we believe they all need. But that strategic action, developing that, is a commitment not just to putting something on a page and saying, look at these cool things our kids are going to be. It's a commitment to teach those. It's a commitment to give feedback on those. It's a commitment to have our students live those things through their experience in our 13 years at, Franklin Public Schools. And that's really the power in a profile of a graduate. But developing that then, takes that idea of leadership skills and replaces it with something that every student can demonstrate, competency towards or growth towards across their school experience. And we could take at high school, for example, and say, freshman year, right, you have to demonstrate X, Y, and Z, right? How are you demonstrating this quality in my class? How are you demonstrating it beyond my class, right? The same way that we have students do that now in these limited areas of portfolios. But that would be, oh, go ahead.
For me, a district, the role of the district is to provide this platform to the students to be a critical thinker and able to be prepared for the future life, whether it's workforce, whether it's future education, and each and every student must be given that platform because they need to be able to start thinking, and everybody needs to be a leader for themselves and for the community. It's a matter of training them and giving them this environment where they're encouraged, because when a person, especially the students at that age, when you're a teenager, I think you must be having this platform irrespective and not selected to only one student, but rather kind of, everyone, because this is a process of training. This is a critical process of training, because if they don't take ownership of their careers, about their life, then we are not providing a platform. It is a responsibility that irrespective that each and every student must have this foresight, critical thinking. I'm doing course A. Why I'm doing it? What are the prospects? Do I really want to do it? Do I want to shadow? That is critical thinking. Leadership skill is just not, as a kind of Mike was saying, not on the paper, but be able to take a problem and able to solve through it and come to the solution. So as a district, I think each and every student must be promoted to have that. If not, students are graduating, and we can see nationally, the trend is that why is students coming from high school and all of a sudden they find college or the careers, they're changing the courses and all that stuff, which is fine. But as a district, we must be able to provide this so that they have a good thought process. Each and every student, I want to go accounting, go ahead, shadow. You want to go to medical transcription, go ahead, shadow. You want to be a CNA, go and shadow. So I think that platform definitely must be for each and every student, and we as a district, I think, must inform them that we have this platform for you, explore. Of course, we cannot make anything mandatory for them, but we must provide them, inform them, and the parents that we have these resources. This is a critical part of education.
Maksud, are you advocating for keeping inroads, or?
I am saying for all the students, because
Right.
Inroads is a good program, but at the same time, it has to be tailored to each and every student. Each and every student, because at the end of the road, we want to kind of, as I said initially, that we want to individualize, but at the same time, give everyone the same platform. Be critical thinkers. This is the need of the time.
I think I agree with the spirit of what Maksud is saying, that the strengths of the En-ROADS program should be available to all students. And we've certainly learned a lot from the experience of having the En-ROADS program. And it sounds like the things that are, very tangible are things that you have a plan for scaling up. It's the intangible things that I think perhaps are the couple of the commenters, and I imagine some of the students will have sort of a morning process about. So this idea of being in a cohort, it's not going to be the same. It isn't. I understand, it's just not going to be the same, and that's okay. Or maybe it's not okay, but we can't pretend that advisory is going to be the same as being with the same people 3 hours a day. A dedicated leadership course. Again, I understand it's more of an intangible thing. It sounds like we're going to try and scale it up, but I'm always concerned that anytime you're teaching something everywhere, everyone's teaching it, that no one's teaching it, no one owns it. And then just sort of that ineffable interdisciplinary connections piece, which again, I agree with you, it's a higher level thing that, people have tried, and so I just wonder if we need to provide an opportunity for the students and parents who have loved En-ROADS to reflect on some of these more ineffable qualities of the experience as stakeholders, and sort of just try and help draw out if there were some of these other intangible benefits that we would hate to lose along the way. I don't know, just to sort of acknowledge that this has been a very important program for many people, and give it the, these students, whether they realize it or not, we're part of an incubation. And so the fact that they are experts on their experience in this area we should appreciate that, right? Like, they did a lot of work for us by taking a chance on this program, and we should give them an opportunity to, tell us how it went.
No, I think definitely, I think taking Angie's point and even the commentator's point, it's very important that we take the input of the parents and the students.
Yeah.
Because they are the stakeholders. They are the stakeholders. We have to learn from the lessons. We have to engage them and see how we can also address their concerns. For example, if sometimes, we do create the comfort zone of being in a cohort, for example, if you're in a class, but at the same time, how can we address a concern, Mike? Is it possible that we can address their concern that things will be still okay? And that we need to provide that reassurance to the stakeholders, which are the students mostly, and the parents, because they have invested the time. So maybe we need to somehow come up with a strategy and planning where we can give them address the concerns and give them the comfort that things will be better or the same, or at least the same, if not better, but at least maybe even better.
And that's a key component of, like, when I say the work for our current students doesn't stop, it doesn't. And it's absolutely imperative that the class of 22, 23, 24, and 25 would have, an experience that they wanted, that they signed up for, that's done the fidelity that we expect. And that's been a commitment, throughout, is what do we need to do that? So it's having that consistency, like it doesn't stop for those students, throughout.
If this is sunsetted, how would it, what would happen to those teachers when it's sunsetted? I assume they're still teachers in our district, but how does their life change? How does their teaching change?
Before we talk about sunsetting, I want to also share with the board, how, because I was here when it was created. And it wasn't really intended to be for every student, because our high-performing students, they have pathways. They know what courses they're taking. They're very driven. They're very focused on where they're going. This program is really created for those students that didn't have that direction, and they weren't engaged in school. They were just going along.
Really?
I would say
agree with
I would
that.
say in
Absolutely
practice,
not. No.
and I don't
No.
disagree, Debbie, I agree, but I'd say in practice, Linda, I'd say we have our most diverse freshman class this year that we've had in my time at Franklin High School and Inroads. And I mean that to say that, like, there was a lot of, analogs of, it is students who are high achieving. And again, that's not a bad thing, certainly, but it wasn't really students who were not engaged in school. They were not participating in Inroads. Students who were not college career ready were not participating in Inroads. It's not the student who was joining that program.
It was never that, or was? It was intended, though, to engage students in a more authentic way than they had before. So it was really to address a need that was seen for certain students.
For all students.
Why can't we say that we have different programs for different students? We have there is the academy. There's different areas. I mean, students need different environments to thrive. It doesn't have to all be the same. And this was a program that was unique and intended to kind of like, address a student that needed something more. And not just, to your point, if it just spreads against everybody, then nothing really, I'd be concerned about that. And I do want you to see that as a program that really was serving students in a unique way that not all students need or would require, or it wasn't just there was a match between what people were looking for and what they wanted.
I too was here when it was created, and I remember hiring the first person who was in charge of it, and she was like a Rachel Fredericks for us at the time. So the whole concept was to create this career pathway and prepare kids in a better ways to choose a career pathway, because we were not there this was quite a while ago. So it was to develop what we're already doing in many ways outside of Inroads. So it did incubate what we needed to incubate and spread throughout the school with that.
And my point, Linda, is that by state statute, we are required to provide career, I can't remember the turn of phrase, career
pathways.
pathway
Academic
for
career
all
planning,
students.
ed for
So that's
employment,
what I
all
mean.
those things.
That aspect of it
Yep.
is for all students. We have to.
Or correct. I mean, don't we have a portfolio or a
This is
student
what-
system that articulates? I mean, there was,
This is what he's been talking about.
correct, but why is the inroads program so strongly connected to this now? I don't understand why it's all of a sudden, this is our education for employment program. It was always over here and not tied to this plan. I don't think it was specifically tied to this plan.
So that plan didn't exist. I mean, it really, in many ways, because we had the inroads program, we grew in our ability to understand career pathways and develop a plan like this. So that plan didn't exist back then when inroads was started. Inroads was the very beginnings of the work around what you see now in the Ed for Employment plan.
And that was sort of my point, is it sounds like what we're moving to keep from inroads are the pieces that specifically address the education for employment requirements. But I would hate for the other beneficial bits that are more ineffable, I'm just going to keep using the word ineffable, because it's the word of the day, to be lost along the way.
And I would add to that, and to the point that you raised, Angie, the idea of learning from our students, like we still have, although we don't have a specific goal around it, we have a goal as a district that our students are engaged, that they have, we have a student engagement survey. We get feedback that our students tell us about their school experience, right? Their feeling of belonging, their feelings of, welcomeness at school, how they treat each other, do they think their teachers care about them? That work doesn't stop, certainly, right? And that's big work for a high school like ours, where we had our students take that survey in October, and there's work we have to do around that. And I think that some of the things you're talking about in terms of like learning from our students who are seniors who went through this program for 4 years, or 3 years plus their senior year, listening, those different things, like there are things to be learned, not just from the staff or from the students, like as they go through, not just, the students who graduate this year and then nobody else, but as they go through, as we have done. Right. And again, like learning from that experience, and then having those staff members who have that skill maybe in deeper things, like they need to be part of the work that we have to do the things that we haven't yet done. Because again, like if they're talking and giving kids feedback on leadership skills, in a class, how does that look for me if I'm a U.S. history teacher 3 years from now? Help me understand how to teach simultaneously, how to analyze primary source, and how to be a better collaborator or critical thinker. How have we done that, right? So how do we build those things as part of it? But again, we have the expertise then in our house and in our community.
One question. The students who will be coming on next year, the 50 who are not going to be in the inroads program, what would you say they're going to be missing out on or losing because we don't have the program anymore?
So I'd say the biggest thing then would be, there's the idea of kids being in a class together, every other day for 3 blocks, right, which those freshmen have had.
The cohort thing.
The cohort.
Okay.
There is the student, the experiences where they go and visit colleges and other things that, they've done, right, as a freshman class. And I'd say that focus on 2 or 3 leadership skills as a freshman cohort through seminar. That's something that does not happen, in Franklin High School, largely for all freshmen.
But is it something that could develop as inroads, if inroads is sunsetted, those are those other qualities of the program that you are planning to integrate somehow into, so an incoming freshman next year who won't be in inroads, if inroads doesn't exist, as of today won't get those skills, but could be that there's something next year that they do connect with, or their advisory is their cohort or something. I mean, like those, they're not necessarily never going to have those opportunities. That maybe it's every bio class goes on a college trip or something. You know what I mean? Like those experiences could still happen. It just won't be under the title of inroads.
Mm-hmm. And how do we do those things then through that core academic, right? That's really because anything's possible, right? If we just say like, here's the thing we have to do. And as we go through and develop, our strategic actions here, some of the things we're going to talk about, we could eventually come back and not only have course proposals, I also might say, I want students before they graduate to do certain things by grade level. It might be as a course, maybe it's an experience. Freshmen are going to tell us they did these things, sophomores do these things. And that could be a graduation requirement, right? The same way courses can be, that students have experiences and we help do that. But when we do that, I'll just remind you, we approved course proposals today for colleges. You can only go to these if you can get there, right? Transportation, other stuff. So when we talk about these things, we talk about real stuff. We talk about job shadows. How do we get kids there? Right? There's things we're going to talk about, like as we go through this work together, where it's not going to be easy work, right, to really take this on, but it's going to be the right work. Because right now, like when I say, kid says, how do I get to MACC? I don't know. You got a car? I mean, because that's what it is, right? How do you get to DBM? Take Calc 3. Figure it out. Right? I mean, that's the reality that we have. And again, those job shadows, internships, apprenticeships, you got to get to work, right? I mean, I have a kid, he has an apprenticeship right now. He can't leave school to go do it. So he has a period in his day, he sits in the library. I'm like, why do you stay here? He's like, well, I can't go to work right now. He's like, I can't get to work till 4 o'clock because I don't have a car. So he gets credit for working, and he works over for an apprenticeship. I believe it's 400 hours or so in a year, maybe more than that. But he works. He can't work at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock because he has no transportation. He has to take the bus home and then get a ride to work, right? And he's a youth apprentice. The same way as a kid who gets to leave at 1 o'clock because they have a block and they have a car, right? So we talk about some of these things. I remind you, it's going to be really good work. And again, like we talk about some of these experiences, it's going to require some creative thinking from all of us, as a school district to really make these things real for our students. Yeah.
Who owns this work, and when will you be reporting back to us on it?
So Ed for Employment, well, I'm not gonna say that that's a thing that I can tell you exactly who's working on that yet. So I know as a district leadership team, we still have to determine kind of where that lives with some of our transition. Previously, it's lived with different directors or administrators over the last handful of years. So that's a program that will have leadership that we need to iron out in terms of who that person's going to be or those persons. But
Dr. Cole.
yeah, when I think about those things though, like the actions, the second one I haven't talked about, expanding current career pathways. We know there's opportunities and like employment statistics, which are part of our education for employment plan to look at. I can tell you for certain, like there's not enough people going to education, right? I mean, that's an absolute fact. Is it easy to say we should make a pathway for that? Maybe yes, right? But how do we do that as a school then? Because we know we have kids going to education. How can we grow talent like that right at Franklin High School, for example? But that's an example of a current career pathway we could grow or things we could expand.
You had an advisory board at one point on these things, didn't you?
We did. So we had education for employment. I'm trying to think, Debbie was part of it over the years. Linda was. Our last year during the pandemic, we were going to go see the musical after our last meeting, and then the pandemic struck. And then we had a year of difference. But
I was on it then.
yeah, Mike, you were there. Yeah, yeah. Remember we had tickets.
Our plan
Yes.
was presented at the state convention.
Yeah. So again, like in terms of like those things of how do we make sure this kind of gets refreshed and everything else, like that part goes without saying that we need to have, again, a team. And last year, we created the district core team. And if you remember, I think the last thing we talked about was what is the future of Ed for Employment plan and what does it look like? Was the thing we're really trying to say, because existentially it was going beyond just updating our actions every year. And we were in a place in 1920 where we said we have to, take a step back and really determine what it is we're doing. Because otherwise we had a very similar nature. Our meetings, we met, we talked about what we wanted to do, we learned some things, then we said, okay, let's go on. So this plan, reflects a bit of a refresh.
So everyone owns it and no one owns it for now?
So
Well, Mr. Vole is really providing
Got
the
it.
direction around this plan right now, because it's really a lot more focused on a high school, but it is broader than that, but yes.
Thank you.
The education for employment meetings that I went to, Mr. Volo was the leader.
Thank you.
happy to be here. In all seriousness, I'm passionate about the work, Angie, and I love it.
Oh, it's
So
good. I mean, at any point, if you need a drink of water, you've been talking here for about pretty much an hour, so, go for it.
staying hydrated. Are there any questions about the plan, the Ed for Employment plan, or those two actions that are in it?
The only suggestion I have is that maybe if we can send some kind of a communication to the parents addressing their concerns that we are kind of not abandoning the program, but we are expanding the program. Because I think, one of the concerns is that if the parents see that this is a very, very valuable tool, even not for the current students, because current students are going to go through the program, but for the future students, if they look up to the district, hey, we have such a good program, maybe some kind of a communication explaining them why we are expanding the program, making it this one rather than kind of, limited. So some kind of a communication
But
from the district.
we're voting on whether to sunset this, but we're also we're taking action on new course approvals tonight. Are any of these new courses going to replace the courses that are going to be lost?
Not,
So why?
so in terms of like this plan, like the two courses, seminar 9, seminar 10, and then field study, right? The goal would be to have things in place where before, the class of 2026 completes Franklin High School, they have, like skills and things they're doing and experiences that
May
replicate
not have
those
them
3
freshman
things.
year.
Correct. And probably won't happen through necessarily a dedicated freshman course, sophomore course, junior course, but again, across their experience,
Opportunities to
what are
have
those different
them
things?
In next year at this time, we'll be voting on course approvals
Potentially a different
for-
course,
for what would replace those classes going forward.
potentially, or the deletion
Those
of,
opportunities.
correct, like, or saying seminars formally go, because our last seminar group will go through, right? So we'll have seminar, will no longer have a group in it after the class of 25 would go through their sophomore year. So then we'd be saying, we're going to delete seminar, and if there's any things that we need to propose, we would do that at this time. But it also
No
could be in,
reason to do that this year, even though the freshmen aren't going to have this opportunity if we sunset it.
no. Our seminar and field study culminate in that leadership skills certificate, which students may or may not earn. But across the way, it's really progress towards that. So when I say only 2 students earned it last year from the senior group, that doesn't mean they didn't do good work freshman, sophomore, and junior year. It just means that they didn't, check all the boxes to turn stuff in before senior year. So that doesn't mean they didn't get that credit freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year, because their experiences were still there and they still demonstrated growth in their own journey as they went through field study and seminar. But that culminated with 2 students graduating last year who actually earned that leadership certificate.
So what are we actually voting on this then?
So the voting would be to not onboard a new program and sunset the class of 2020 after the class of 25 completes the program. So really the largest thing is, again, we wouldn't bring on a new group of freshmen
On page 12 at the bottom.
or and to your point, Maksu, to be like communication, everything else, like after this in terms of like our current students as well as, like our incoming class 26 and beyond, like would be something that we need to do, not just now, but also like going forward.
Well, what about to Angie's point about, really talking to students and parents on what it is that made that class special? And maybe we don't take a class, the freshman class, this next year. We just pause. And then a year from now, when we've had some of that information and input, then we decide to sunset next year. Because it seems so sudden, all of a sudden, we're here. Sunsetting a program, we've got all the information we really have that I'm hearing as far as the reasons is because we want to scale up. I get that, but it's not, the work is not all done yet. We're not sure how we're doing it. And we're hearing that it's FTE heavy, so that's a concern also. But those are the 2 reasons I'm hearing, is that, so why can't we just not take this freshman class and don't worry about, and not necessarily sunset it, but clearly the indicators are there. But we don't make the decision until after a year from now when we have the information we're seeking, which is student and parent input and a little bit more specifics on how we're scaling up on the components that we want to keep. I think that's a fair approach.
And just correct me, Angie, I think you were maybe implying two things. One is that we learn from the students that we have. I mean, I would argue that most students who've been in inroads, and again, like the cohort model is great when it's great. When it's not great, it's not great. So, you know, if a student's in the cohort and they don't love it, right, then students aren't in the cohort anymore. So like most students in inroads are going to say they like inroads. Most parents are going to say they like inroads.
How many students have dropped? How many students start in inroads and don't finish in inroads?
If you look at the numbers, so it varies by cohort, but if you look at the
I'm sorry.
enrollment, no, it doesn't, it's not reported that way, Mike. So, for example, when I said there was 150, then it was, you know, like down to 74 in 2017-18. In 2017-18, there was a really large sophomore cohort and a really small freshman cohort. So sophomore cohort was 40-some. From 50, it went down to 40-some. But that's also not just because kids leave. It can be because of those course selection options, right, which were highlighted before. So kids don't always leave because they have a bad experience, although it can be any combination. But, like, you have choices. So the fewer things that you have in your schedule, there's a conflict with engineering, there's conflict with world language, conflict with music. That can all run into, if we run all our music in the morning, for example, right, and then inroads is in the same morning, that's your cohort for music, that's your cohort for inroads. Like, you can't do both. So when you look at those numbers, right, you can see 50, 57, those were obviously smaller groups. You know, and I can tell you that from that first year to the second year, you know, once that sophomore group left, the class of would have been the sophomores in 2017-18, that group lost a decent number after their freshman year. But then the groups tend to be, most kids persist. So, like, if there's a group of 30, most kids continue every year.
So it's 80% or something like that.
More than that.
90%.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And what happens if we don't sunset it
If we
this year?
don't sunset it, or we don't have new freshmen, or both.
If we don't sunset it, we have new freshmen, I assume.
Mhm.
So what happens if we don't sunset it?
Then we keep
going.
We can
staffing it.
pause. Why can't we pause?
I mean, that's basically the same thing.
But if you.
If we pause, we're
aren't
not starting again. I mean, I don't
Right.
think we are.
But if you pause,
you don't
then
have the freshman
you've now,
class.
yeah, you've
Yeah.
neglected one whole class of students.
Yeah, either it's worth it or it's not.
Right. I think either you do or you don't.
And from a staffing, you're starting over with new staff again then, because those staff would be assigned to something else, or they might leave, you know? So then staffing is a little bit of an issue on a pause. Not impossible, but it could be an issue.
Gotta be honest, I've got to be honest, my only reason that I can't get fully behind this or wrap my mind around it is just because it came as such a surprise. And it came as a surprise to the board, and it's taken parents by surprise. And I just think the rollout of this, in terms of at least like surveying your parents and your students who've been involved, you really missed an opportunity there to sort of bring them along with you and not create ill will. That's my comment.
And I can see that, because it certainly was, sort of surprising. I guess I'm looking at it more as opening up opportunities for other kids, like one of the reasons, I personally, one of the reasons my kids didn't choose to do inroads is exactly what Mr. Volo just said. If you want to do the world language, the music, the engineering classes, you aren't going to have time for that. And so opening up some of these opportunities for non-inroads students to be able to do some of the inroads things, I just feel like it is a more, I don't know, like a more equitable approach to all of, to our education for our students. I get it. I mean, people who are in inroads who, have a really tight connection, have a really great experience. And that is, there, like you said, there'll be a grief process there, right? Because there is a sense of loss. But I feel like, kind of to your point, Angie, we can learn from what were those things that made inroads so great, try to apply them to our classes in a broader sense, and allow more of our students, not just 50 every year, but 300 every year, to have those experiences of the job shadows or the college visits or whatever it is. So it it's a loss in one way, but, to flip it around, the glass half full, it's really kind of a gain for our entire community.
Is it? If we keep inroads, those kids can't do all those things that you just mentioned?
No, the
It's
kids, all the kids
impossible?
are going to do it.
Yeah, all the
It's not
kids.
that only this kid. Now, all the kids will be able to do it. It's not that, you see, I think we have to use the right wording here. We are not taking it away from a select students. We are expanding it to all the students.
You can expand it to all the students without
That's what they're
taking it
doing.
away.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but why do you have
gives
to
you
take
the
it away
vote?
from some people and that then prevents you from expanding it everywhere else?
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all.
Are you really taking it away? Because if it sunsets, it's the children who are in it now are going to be able to finish. They are going to be able to complete. We're not taking that opportunity
Taking it away
from
from the future students coming to high
What
school.
is it? What is
But
the
no,
it?
the future
Inroads.
students are going to be opened up to that greater opportunity. So,
But we don't know what that looks like. We don't know if it can be scaled. They haven't done it yet. I'm just saying, let's just wait a year before we vote on sunset. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think you can wait a year on that. I
Why
don't
can't
think
we
you-
wait a
I
year?
don't
What
think you
do
can
we have to
pause
do?
it.
I don't believe in pausing either.
No, I don't think that, I don't think you can do that. That's not fair.
Okay.
If we continue it one more year and get a better feeling of what this is all about, someone said, survey the students and the parents, and what do they have to say? I'd feel more comfortable if we had that,
Delay the end.
but I anticipate they're all gonna say, this is great,
Yeah.
Right.
best thing since sliced bread, and
Right.
then we're gonna throw it out anyway?
I guess I wasn't implying it, survey them to determine their view on sunsetting it or not, but respect their experiences and insights as to what aspects of the program were valuable and should be continued.
But Mike, I think you know what's valuable, that we're trying to expand everywhere
And-
in the
and-
school.
You only
Yeah.
know what you ask.
Correct, but then what Angie said, and I highlighted like the idea of like, we have students, not just the class 25 or 24, 23, we have class 22. It's like knowing that student experience and learning from the kids we have is something we can do, right? Something we need to do, like that's not, that idea is a great idea. I don't
You're
disagree,
saying
like,
even if we sunset it, we should get that survey?
yes,
Okay,
but
that
it's not a
makes sense.
survey of saying that you like it or not. It's deeper than that. It's richer data than that. Because like, again, just ask people if you like it or not. Let's ask the other 350 kids, do you like inroads? Like, I wasn't in it. Like, I mean, the people are always gonna like it who are in it, because we do a great job. Like,
And
if
I
we didn't
think-
do a good job, it'd be a different conversation. Like, we're not here because it doesn't work.
Right.
And it's not just asking the parents of, who've had kids in inroads, it's all parents. Like, what is it that you want for your kids in terms of their career pathways? What experiences do you want them to have? What skills and dispositions? Because you're just asking a small group of people when we need to ask everyone what's important to them about this.
Oh, absolutely agree.
Is this the
But I
first?
see us killing inroads. Why? I mean, why can't we give everybody all this other stuff without killing inroads?
Well, it becomes redundant if you have it in a program and you have it everywhere else, and it's expensive.
Are we expecting, so there was 60 kids that signed up for it this year. And there's 10 on the waiting list. Is that accurate or roughly accurate?
Close, yeah.
Is this the first year there's been a waiting list?
First year since 2016, 17.
Okay, do we expect there to continue to be a waiting list? What do
It's-
we know from eighth graders this year? Do we expect are there gonna be 60 signed up this year? Or are there gonna be 100 that wanna sign up?
We don't know. 'Cause
I
we don't-
understand that, but do we,
It really did, like, I mean, there's a reason that more kids signed up for it this year, because they made a concerted effort to try to market to a wider range of kid and make it not exclusive or honors light or whatever you want to call it. Because those years when it was 50 across two cohorts, that's what it was marketed as. It was marketed as for certain kids. You're an inroads kid, you're not. You should be in here, you shouldn't. Like gates. And again, like that's like an AP class, should never have gates. Right, you want to be in this class, take the class. And that's the way it was marketed for several years. And again, the staff made a strong effort, right? And Ms. DeLassis, when she was here, made a strong effort to lead that staff to say, it's for everyone, which requires educating middle school teachers, school counselors, and the students, which gave us, more than 50 kids for a year.
So that's the way we'd be marketing it again if it was not sunsetted. So likely there would be more kids in it. So we either have to expand, I mean, I agree that it has to be something for the entirety of the school district.
Yeah.
But I don't see that we're offering it to the entirety of the school district next year. For freshmen next year. And that's what bothers me.
And I think that Mr. Volo has been clear on the fact that this will not be a solely freshman year experience, right?
No, I understand that. That's what concerns me.
I think really when, Alan, when you were saying like, why can't we continue to offer it? The it that would be lost would be the seminar classes, the field study classes, and the cohort model, right? And so I guess then the question is, if we're expanding the rest of the program to the entire student body at the high school, is it worth maintaining this program with its, attendant staffing needs to preserve field study, seminar, and a cohort model for 50 students at the high school? That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think that's very concisely said because at the end of the road, we want to have everybody the experience, everybody the opportunity of shadowing, etc., etc., etc. But I think it comes down to whether it's financially, physically, and also preference-wise. Because the question is that if the 50 students, what about the 51st student? What about the 60th student? If he wants to be the part of it and we are not able to offer it, then are we being equitable? And that's not fair to that student who's on the waiting list, or the 61 student, or the 100 student. It's not fair if they want to be. So I think, somehow giving everybody the platform, the same amount of platform, at the same time, same experience. And I think it's a tricky balance, but I think, we have to be cognizant that we have to be fair to each and every student, give everybody the same opportunity of learning, apprenticeship, and all that stuff. And it's only coming down to being a cohort. Definitely, I understand the preference, but just because of the cohort model, we cannot deprive the other students of the opportunity that, hey, whatever it is.
Well, if you look at it as choice, though, I mean, you said you chose not to do they can choose to be in the program or not. So all these years, people were looking at this or that, making their choices, and we never had a problem. Since the first year, we have 10 more than we thought we were going to have. And then we shut it down. It doesn't.
Well, we've had a problem because there was less than 50 students, so it wasn't.
less.
It was. No, well, okay, but if it's 40, then we have another issue, right? I mean, it can't be. If it's 30 kids, then do we drop it? I mean, that's the.
I think the point of this isn't that the program is failing, but that aspects of it are succeeding. And so the conversation is, they want to broaden out to the entire school the parts that are working really well. And,
Understand.
it was an incubator model. Because it was an incubator model, it had to be a small cohort, because they had to be a self-contained group of students to run this sort of, I don't want to say experiment, but this trial. So, I mean, the aspects that I'm sad that we're going to be losing are the dedicated leadership teaching, and then the field study work. I think that maintaining a cohort model for the sake of having a cohort model at the high school level isn't necessarily, that's just my opinion.
And could those leadership skills and field studies be incorporated into other, I mean, will it happen next year by September 1st? Maybe not, but we also, we have time and we can develop some of those things. Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No problem. I would love to table this discussion because I have a lack of comfort with this vote. And if I could come to the high school or somehow sell me on this more, because there's just something I'm not getting.
I think the trouble with tabling it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it needs to be decided so that the course selection can happen for next
Yeah,
year.
this, we have to vote on
Okay.
this one way or the other.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to accept the administration's recommendation in that the inroads program be sunset after the class of 2025 cohort completes the program, and that no new other program enrollments be offered for the 22-23 school year.
I'll second that motion.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a voice vote, please? Any more discussion?
I will probably not vote to sunset it, and I want to explain why, because I do think it's not going to hurt us to run this one more year and get a little more information. So, and it was a surprise, so I'm not going to support sunsetting. I just wanted to be clear for that reason.
All right, can we have a voice vote, please?
Yes. Dr. Khan,
Yes.
Dr. Beer,
Yes.
I vote aye. Mr. Sprague,
No.
Mrs. Witkowski,
No,
Mr. Alexandrovich,
No.
and Mrs. Sapersky.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-3.
All right, thank you. New course approvals, Mr. Volo, Ms. Neese, and Ms. Sundstrom. Please.
We are seeking approval to revise and eliminate just a few courses at the high school. These recommendations are a result of our ongoing curriculum review process. As you can see in the report, we're looking in business to revise the name of two of the courses to better reflect the broader scope of learning that occurs in these two classes. So for example, we're hoping to have marketing replace sports and entertainment marketing. This is our introductory marketing class. The learning is really focused on the broad principles and topics in marketing, and that sports and entertainment are examples of industry that can be included in the learning, but having that in the title is sort of confining to the larger learning there. And then the advertising, to replace the advertising in web design, as the course title currently kind of makes it sound like that course is like 50% each. And sometimes even leads to the misunderstanding that it's like about coding, when the class is really about advertising, and web design might be a part of that, but isn't like the only lens that the teaching and learning is around. And then in the math, we're continuing our math review work that started in the 17-18 school year and our leveling up process that began in 2019. So this year, we're looking to eliminate honors pre-calc, and students will continue to enroll in the appropriate math course regardless of their grade. So please let me or us know if you have any questions.
I know when we met as part of my liaison meeting, I had questions about how students can accurately reflect academic rigor in their transcripts for colleges by, so eliminating the word honors concerns some parents that it won't accurately reflect the rigor of their students' course load. Can you please comment on that?
Yes, so in the good news category, our colleges are very versed in how math progresses. So the advanced or accelerated nature for students who are learning math earlier than the regular time frame, it shows up in their transcript by the year they take it. So if a student takes IM1 or integrated math 1 as an 8th grader, when their transcript shows, they will see integrated math 2 under 9th grade, integrated math 3 under 10th grade, and then pre-calculus under 11th grade, calculus or AP or whatever they take as a 12th grader. And every college admissions is very familiar that that shows the student was like 1 year accelerated. So it still shows depending where it falls on their transcript. And
I believe what you said to me was that the language that you are converting to is basically the standard language of the majority of college admissions
Yes.
that our students apply to.
And just to like add to that, so college admissions honors can mean whatever a school thinks it means. So things like advanced placement have certain curricular requirements, therefore it's a known entity. There's certain things you have to do as a school, as a teacher to teach. whereas honors doesn't mean anything. So colleges really can't consider honors as rigor compared to APs and other things because they don't know what it meant. I had honors biology as a student. We went slower than the non-honors biology. We all took the same test. There were 3 levels of biology, but I was in honors because I was a smart kid. So, I mean, it really doesn't mean anything to college admissions. And to hear them say that, whether it's Ohio State, Lawrence University, Wisconsin, that's the fact, is it really can't mean anything because they don't know what it means.
And in this case, we were using honors just as an indicator of the grade level. It really, students taking pre-calc or honors pre-calc had the same standards. It just indicated what grade level they are, which really isn't necessary on their transcript. It's going to show they had it whatever year they were ready for pre-calc.
And for a student taking pre-calculus, how is it going to determine whether they take the calculus AB or BC? Is it their preference, or is it just about?
Honestly, it's a preference for them. You know, if they're interested in having that college level experience and or they're trying to get credits, you know, to get into college, they might choose the AP Calc AB. If they want to like do 2 semesters in the year, then they choose that AP Calc BC. So it is a preference for the kid.
Will there be some specific recommendations from the teachers, like if the student is doing pre-calculus, that okay, if you did good, you know, we recommend you to maybe try AP, BC, or AB, or you know, if you're a little bit kind of maybe struggling, then maybe do so. Will there be some kind of a guidance from the teachers as such, how to kind of, you know, navigate the students? Because of course we don't want the students to take easy things, but at the same time we want to challenge them in an appropriate setting.
It is, I would say our teachers right now, in collaboration with the counselors, do work with students about like what fits their academic and career planning and their hopes for college or wherever they're going. So yes, those conversations happen for sure.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the new courses as presented.
I would make that motion.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Curriculum review cycle update, Ms. Neese and Ms. Sundstrom. Thank you very much, Mr. Volo.
Thank you.
Okay, so every year we're coming to you with these course approval reports, and we wanted to share a little bit of the broader curriculum work that happens in addition to the kind of slice that you get access to. And lots of times you're seeing just a specific course at the middle or the high school when it reaches that approval, revision, or elimination phase. There's a little one-pager to go with your board report around the curriculum review cycle. We're really looking at the curriculum review cycle's ongoing work for continuous improvement, and we're going to our circular visual to sort of highlight the cyclical nature of the work, and we're labeling the stages, stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So normally when I come to you, or we come to you, the team is in stage 2 around that action planning when we come and ask for course approvals. So I'm thinking about over the last few years, we've come to you a lot with some information around science because that team was in that stage 2 and we wanted to update and align our middle school and high school science classes. So you heard a lot about that the last couple of years. But sometimes you do see us other points. So you might see slices at other stages when you hear from us. So I'm thinking about like our Inroads Sunset or even these business renames. These teams are in that stage 4 in that ongoing continuous monitoring. So you might see that as well then. Teams are at very different points in the review process. Sometimes that's due to specific district work that we're working on. Sometimes that's like the state will say, hey, we've got some new standards, so we want to dig into that. Or, you know, it could be very specific to the team. The stages are, they can vary in length for how long a team needs to focus in on the work. And I would say they're not always going to occur in order. So for example, like our music team is in the implementation phase right now. A couple of years ago, I know you heard from us, and they're kind of working toward these new standards. And simultaneously, right now, Dr. Moe and Dr. Cohn We'll be kicking off some work with the music team around like some analysis and root cause work to ensure that we're keeping the program really strong. So it's kind of an example of where a team might be flexing within the stages and not necessarily going directly in order. We do have widespread district leadership support in this departmental learning, in the analysis and the action planning, in the professional development, implementation work, and ongoing continued support. I would say all of our district leaders are involved in this work. Administrators, teachers, leaders, all of those. Work is really focused on using evidence-based strategies and research to guide us, and we're constantly learning and applying that with our teams. Our work does connect directly to the professional development that all of our teachers interact with. So curriculum really is like, what is this experience for our students, and do we know the best practices and are we implementing them with our students? So the learning that teachers get in professional development, they do directly apply into our classes. This is really joint work. There's a deep collaboration among district and building administration and teacher leaders and system specialists on how a program is going and how we can work together. And we do have a consistent focus on that student experience and seeking feedback from students along the way. So trying to give you an overview, I know you have like the pieces we do in each of those stages, but wanted to highlight some of the work that we're doing.
I appreciate this, this report very much because it gives us a good thing to look at every year when we go over the curriculum review process and when we see the new classes. I appreciate that this is made, and I hope it's easy to find because this is a fantastic document to
We'll
look at
definitely
and
reach
be a
out if you have
refresher.
questions along the way, yeah.
And then I think we talked a little bit about possibly sort of outlining, at least at a high level, which curricular areas are in which stages currently.
Yep.
I don't know if that,
If you
I
look
knew
at
I
your-
saw it somewhere. You handed it out. Oh,
It's just
goodness.
under your other page
Yes,
there.
it blended in, so yeah.
Yeah,
that was
sorry about that, yeah.
a nice
This
little
is the
addition.
entire scope of curriculum that you work with?
These are our major teams that we're working with, yeah.
Teams assigned to each of these lines?
Yeah, what's really nice is with this work, I mean, it really is, everybody is invested, and with our efforts, we're able to include like all of our teaching staff, which is really nice.
So only one area is in stage 2, which is world language. How do you balance the work, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is a little bit messy because with last year and our entire focus on supporting immediate learning needs and going into, you know, virtual programming support, I would say we didn't have as much deep analysis happening during, the first year and a half of COVID. So we're getting our legs under us more now.
A lot of things synced up.
Yeah,
During
more
COVID.
teams got synced up with that.
Kind of good to know though, huh?
It's probably an indication why the course approval report was so small this year as well, just by the nature of how things flowed.
So then, which stage do you come back to the board then?
So it could happen anytime, but you're gonna lots of times see us at stage 2 if there is some changes that need to happen as a result of the work.
So we'd expect you'd come back for world language this year sometime, because that's a stage 2, so that's.
So I wouldn't say that the stages are like only a year long. And sometimes we don't have, we don't necessarily have like a course change when we're doing the work. So like in world language, the standards got updated and we're doing work around, improving instruction toward the vision of world language. But it doesn't necessarily result in us saying we have a different world language class to offer. Like we might be streamlining Spanish 1, but I don't have like a new course.
Like
to bring to you.
when science came around, there was a lot of change at the elementary and middle school level, but the high school level didn't change a great deal, although now it switched from biology to pre-AP biology, and everybody took that. And so there was science and math, and then there was gonna be a year break to give people a break. And then there was gonna be social studies and math, or social studies and English, I
right.
think. And now I don't know what state all these other ones are.
So
in,
over
but-
the next year or
but
two,
yeah,
you
right,
might start
but
seeing
this
some
is-
more of that.
That's the cycle for the major core classes.
If we
At
realize
least that's
like
what it was.
the content of a class at the middle or the high school is going to look vastly different, then we want to come to you and say, hey, here's what this new course would look like. Here's our reasoning behind it, which is like, Mike, you're saying, like with the science, you heard a lot about what we were doing because
So you
we knew
wouldn't-
the class was going to look and feel different than it had been.
But you wouldn't come back to say everything's working fine. I mean, that's good news too. But we only
That's
see it
sort
if
of
it's a
what-
change.
So I'm the liaison to curriculum, and so I can, I'll practice, I'll work on answering your questions more pointedly when I give my liaison reports, but that's a lot of what our conversations are about. Like, how are things going in science? They're not going to be asking for a course review vote, but we've had some conversations about how they're sort of expanding their management of the science curriculum across grades K through 8, and it's going well, that kind of a thing. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
know.
liaison thing, Linda.
Okay, I'm just saying that in our library, our board docs library, there's a document that the board used to see, which kind of outlined it, so you could kind of get a feel for what's coming around, whereas this is a point in time. So,
We were kind of deliberate about that. I know we used to say like 1 year for analysis, like 1 year for action planning. I want to be, we want to be really real about the work. For some teams, it is 1 year. For some teams, we want to dig deeper, or we're learning more pieces and it's going to be more than 1 year. So that was like our reason to go to this sort of circular vision versus here's a grid and I can tell you for sure in 3 years, I'll be in front of you about a subject area, which can be.
so the circle's always spinning, you're saying?
Sure, it's a wheel, yeah.
Okay.
The
It's a
circle of
different,
life.
it's a different view.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a continuous improvement model. And so that is ongoing. It's living in our work. It's living on our professional development days. It lives through our coaching. It lives, and so we're continually taking a step back and assessing where teams are at to determine our next move to prepare teachers to deliver impactful instruction. And along with that, we're assessing their professional development needs, right, and collecting assessment data. So yes, that's why there's a range of 1 to 3 years, or you'll see in here, because the numbers in the stages don't equate to year 1, then you move on to year 2, right? It's a process.
Okay, I'll go with the process then for a year and see where we're at. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item E, 22-23 Forest Park Middle School scheduling update. Dr. Moe, please.
This will be very quick. We've had some questions around this, just reminding the board and making sure that you know that pending what happens with COVID and mitigation and cohorting and our needs next year, the intent always was that the middle school would move back to that A-day, B-day schedule that they used to have. It was put, the cohorts were put in for COVID. They were kept this year. I know everyone thought this year would be back to normal, so I hate to say next year will be back to normal, but we are starting to have conversations that by next year, the middle school would return to the A-day, B-day schedule that they had. So because that related loosely to courses and planning, we added it as an update here.
Thank you, that's good news.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about that? 2022-23 school calendar. Sorry, Ms. Domrus, please.
So in your packets, you do have a draft as of now for the 2022-2023 school year. It usually comes to you around this time with a memo kind of summarizing what we focus on when we build this calendar, which in mind is the student focus and their learning experience, the professional development days for our staff, and then our parent and staff focus as well. So the calendar looks pretty similar to the format of this current school year. The number of actual learning days and teacher contract days remains the same. We do actually not necessarily go on days for students, we go by instructional minutes. So I just want to make that known or a reminder of that. Two things that I do want to mention that are a little bit different from this current school year is that where we were able, so naturally it makes sense for students and parents to tack on professional development days to already planned breaks. It just, instead of breaking it up 4 days this week, 3 days this week, 4 days this week. So when applicable, we did do that, but we also made the change that traditionally this year, professional development days all occurred on Mondays. So the ones that were kind of standalone in different months, we did move those to Fridays. Those can be easier for parents sometimes when planning taking off of work versus a Monday. So that is a change that we made. So I believe for the next year, we have 3 Fridays, 2 Mondays, and then 1 is a Tuesday that lines up with a break naturally. And then the other difference that you will notice is that in May of this year, the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, we do have a conditional snow day. We did make the choice this next year to make that a full school day in order to kind of accommodate the end of the year for students and teachers. So this year, our last school day will be a Friday, and then teachers are required to return that following Monday to kind of close out the year. So this would allow us to end school on the Thursday, and then teachers could finish everything up on that Friday for their work time. And then that would kind of conclude the school year within that time period.
So this year, the Easter break is Thursday, Friday, and Monday, but next year it's only Friday and Monday.
That could be because of a professional development day that might be tacked on this year. I have the other calendar here.
I think there was also more space between the spring break and the, what you would call Easter break. There was more school days in between, so we needed to make that week a little worthwhile.
How did you fit in the day before Thanksgiving as a day off? How did you?
So that is consistent with the schedule this year. It's my understanding that previously was a half day, and then we moved to a full day this current school year, and we kept it consistent moving forward.
Attendance was poor, and half days are really bad for busing.
I agree. Why have a half day? But why not have a full day? I don't know.
Attendance
day
is
on
poor.
Wednesday?
Because attendance is poor.
Somebody's got to make the pie.
Do the professional development days line up with other districts? So there could be any kind of like collaboration with other districts, or is it just independently decided by Franklin?
I think it's independently decided by Franklin. I think it's something we can explore in the future, but I think it would be difficult because obviously every school district is kind of has its own professional development plan.
There's 6 days? 6
I believe, yes, during the school year, we have 6 days, and then we have those pre-session days for our staff as well that start before school.
And that's been consistent for many, many years?
Yes. Same as this year.
Is this, we're not voting on the site.
No.
Do we vote on the
No.
calendar? Thank you.
Well, it looks great. It's a calendar. Good job.
I
It's a
love
lot
the
of moving
calendar.
parts.
But I think we also talked about, Dr. Miller and I also talked about snow days and, or inclement weather days, and likely not ever having to make up snow days again, because we would go to virtual on the second one. So I think that's of note, but
That's of note, and it makes my 1980s heart sad to think of no more snow days. but
It makes teachers very sad as well.
Listening to
Well, the first one's a
WCLO
snow
for
day.
the school closures.
The first inclement situation would be not one where we do virtual, but the second and the third and the fourth, they're going to be
All right.
virtual learning
We
experiences.
also don't want to go to school until, the middle of June or whatever, so.
Fair enough.
That first one is gonna be great.
I just hope it's snow and not cold.
Yeah,
That's true. All right.
All right, thank you. Treasurer's report is available in the board docs library. Item 10, board liaison reports. Personnel and policy, policy 6820, testing and assessment. Dr. Khan, please.
So we are reviewing the policy 6820 for testing and assessment. There's just a mild change in language, and the changes are consistent with the Wisconsin DPI, requirements as such. So no major changes, the change in language, and we are just removing the part of the administration of how the standard test is done for specific the D, E, and F, because we do comply with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's guidelines. So just a change in language, that's about it, which kind of falls in line with the DPI guidelines as such.
Question, so we eliminated that language in here because it's DPI, but how do parents know what the exceptions are, and they have to go to DPI to get that information, or if you take it out of here, where is it? I mean,
DPI, in that test guidance, they go as far as creating form letters that you send to parents. It's very comprehensive. So in that, every year when they do the guidelines, that's all goes in the parent letter that goes out. There's even letter templates that they send, that they provide, they meaning DPI.
Oh, that all comes from DPI to
Correct.
parents for all tests?
We use them.
We use them.
Oh.
The DPI doesn't send it, but you go on and everything that you need is there. So the reason why it was eliminated, it's kind of redundant. For example, this year, I'm thinking of testing for students with IEPs, for instance. In the pandemic, there was tons and tons of new DPI guidance that came out, and I cannot come up with the reason, and nobody could, that we would never follow DPI's guidelines for testing. So we always default to what they set. So it became kind of redundant to spell those out. That would all be part. There would never be an instance where we would not follow the state guidelines for testing.
No, I understand that, but I just was wondering how parents would know what their options were. And that you're saying there's a communication.
Correct. You are required to notify parents.
Okay, so they have that.
That's
coming
correct.
right to them. Okay. Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any questions, concerns? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve revised policy 6820 as presented.
So moved.
All right, motion's been moved, or made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board liaison reports.
I followed up at Ben Franklin. We reviewed the steps being taken for their building improvement plan, and specifically focusing on their professional development days on expanding their professional learning communities to include all stakeholders, including like scheduling around those who have to cover multiple classes, so assistants in various classes. So they made a big calendar to make sure everybody's involved, and that sounds like it's going to go a long way to making sure everybody's at the table. I also learned that their first professional development day was a celebration day because Ben Franklin had the highest percentage growth increase in their state report card of any of the elementary schools, or I think any of the schools in Franklin, at 2.3%. So I just wanted to make sure to share that with you all. That's something to be proud of.
Did anyone else?
I did share with the board the SWSA meeting slide deck. And I think we talked about before that I'm going to check with Judy to kind of see how we can get more discussion or awareness of what's going on in the, I want to say wacky world of the state, but they have a lot of stuff going on, and it's amazing to me. So
Well, it's a goal now, Linda. We can't avoid it.
Yes. So, and also I did get to the high school for a visit. I do have their goals. I got to see a couple classrooms, math classrooms. It's, integrated math, IM 1, IM 2. At first I thought, well, what classroom am I going to IM at? That means nothing to me, but it is integrated math. I figured that out. And some of the goals are around closing gaps and also evidence-based practices in the classroom. One thing that was obvious was that every classroom does have learning goals. Consistently, every classroom has the learning goals so that students know what they're learning. And that seems to be the question that Mr. Bull always asks whenever he sees the students, is what you're learning. So I guess as a parent, instead of asking what happened in school today, you can say, what did you learn in school today?
All right, that's
Because
good
that is
tip.
something that they seem to have certainly increased awareness of. I was also very, when I went there, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, I couldn't believe how quiet it is. I had to ask, are there students here? Because it's so quiet in the high school. Everybody's where they're supposed to be.
Still asleep. No, that's not.
Oh, they're still asleep? That might have been it also, but they seem to be very engaged in their work, so it was quite impressive. So that is all I'll say about a liaison report.
I went to Southwood Glen, and I was particularly interested in seeing what social emotional learning was all about. I could not conceive it. So Principal Mowbray took me through a second grade and a fourth grade session in which they went through it, and I was very impressed with it. It teaches the kids how to be inclusive and how to interact with others in second and fourth grade. And I don't know what they do in the upper grades, but that might be kind of interesting. Someone had indicated to me that they thought CRT, that's social emotional learning, that's part of CRT, but CRT is a divisive thing and this is an inclusive thing. And I saw nothing of CRT when I saw that, so that was very, very good for me.
All right, I spent some time at Pleasant View, and I will publish the school improvement goals and how they're working on them. I also got to visit kindergarten and first grade classroom and see a lesson in those. Unfortunately, the kindergarten one was about 10 minutes before lunch, so they were about ready to climb the wall. But then I also got to go on Monday for their knowledge-a-thon. And boy, they had a small army of volunteers for the knowledge-a-thon, and it was, the kids were quite engaged, although the first graders probably were, half an hour might have been a little aggressive for them, probably 15 minutes would have been enough. But it was fun to see the kids being engaged and learning. I also attended the CISA meeting recently and volunteered to be a reader for the Cole scholarships this year. So it's my first year doing that. So looking forward to that. Anybody else? I've lost my place. So we are on 10C. Thank you. School and community engagement reports. Anybody?
There's a lot going on. Go to it all. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
There's the
There's
play.
a lot
There's
going
the
on. How was the
orchestra.
play?
There's the
I went to
football.
the play.
It was amazing.
Play was interesting.
Oh, I loved it.
You loved it?
Yeah.
It's an older play. Certainly a very relevant message on how people can be misled. So, but it was very well done, I thought. I did also go to the soccer game, when the soccer game playoffs. Didn't do it in high school, went to soccer one, and it was how I remembered it, being the soccer field. The soccer parents were some of the same faces, but they won the game, so it was good. But they lost the next one. So.
I thought the students did a really great job with the play. It was very different. It was a very different feel of the play, but just in terms of the content, but I thought they did such a good job with it. I thought it was fascinating. Really kind of an interesting thing. And football team, they keep going.
There you go.
Off to Oshkosh on Friday. That's been very exciting.
Anybody planning to go to, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but let's just say they make it to state.
Oh my God, Linda, knock on wood. You
I was
can't
just gonna say,
these
it's been
things
3
out
times
loud.
or something.
All right, I won't say anything. Sorry.
I will tell you at the, I was at the game on Friday night. I was just kind of standing off, kind of in the area of the band, and the game was going on, and some people came and stood next to me for a second, and they're like, well, so who's who? And I was like, well, Franklin is wearing black jerseys, I think, and I forget if Bayport was wearing blue or white or something. So these are the Franklin ones. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what's happening? I was like, well, they just ran. I forget, it was like, they just ran 90 yards and gotten a touchdown, and so they're winning. Well, what's the score? So I pointed up to the scoreboard, and it's like, it's 21-0 or something. I'm like, oh, that's such great news. We're so excited to be here. We're going to go sit down now. And they walked off, and I was like, I wanted to go back after them and be like, well, who are you, and why are you here? And like, let me, like, not in a bad way, but just like, how exciting for the community to come out. I have to assume they must be community members, but to just come out and really not have an idea necessarily of who was who, but then be very excited, and they were gonna stay all night. They had blankets and everything, so.
All right.
The community's getting involved, even if they've never been to a football game before.
I was surprised you didn't recognize me.
Must've been the hat,
Oh.
Ally.
I was wearing a coat. There's a middle school wrestling tournament this weekend, so come out and watch some wrestling.
Nice.
I volunteered at the dance competition this past weekend. That was really good. Dance team looks good this year. That's all I got.
There's lots to be proud
There's a lot of going on.
Lots to be proud of and lots to go to. All right, item 11, board meeting debriefing, school board member comments. Anybody have any comments?
We sure did learn a lot tonight.
I think it was a good discussion. It was a very productive discussion, and I think everybody participated, so I do appreciate, everybody voicing their opinion and, in a respectful manner, so thank you for everyone's participation.
All right, anyone else? Future agenda items, Forest Park Middle School presentation, coherence plan update, annual assessment report, board clerk's report, election notice, Friends of Franklin recognition, communications update, and review and discussion of WASB resolutions. And we will only be having one meeting in December, so one meeting left this year. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at
Really late hour.
9:20.